Hello and welcome to episode 1386 of The Sleeper and the Bust. It is Friday, March 7th. I'm your host, Paul Sporer, joined this morning by Justin Mason. Justin, how's it going this fine morning?
It is early. I am still waking up, but I am ready to talk outfielders for as long as we need to get this episode or get this preview done.
Let's do it. Let's dive in to outfielders. Let's start with some news. It doesn't really change anything. It's really just to show that the real baseball world is praising a guy as much as the fantasy baseball world is. Lawrence Butler, 7-year, $66 million extension. Good for him. Club option for an 8th season. Buys out 2 free agent years. I love it. I love seeing the Athletics, do something right for once. They generate good players with a decent bit of consistency. They rarely keep them around, and Butler's somebody that they've chosen to keep around. They signed Rooker too, so they've signed their 2 big, breakouts over the last few years. I know you love Butler. I love Butler. So again, there's not much on the fantasy front. I just wanted to bring it up to kind of, give him his due for getting paid there. So congratulations to Lawrence Butler.
Yeah, I think it's awesome that they did this. Hopefully he's not selling himself a little, too short, but
Right.
to get kind of out from under these arbitration years and get some, good money in his pocket. Can't really blame a guy.
Yeah, taking that money. You never know what the future holds, right? And he is somebody who's has a half season right now. So you got 66 million off of a half season. You got to feel pretty good about that. And he'll still be in his early 30s. And if he is a superstar, and we'll see, that remains to be seen for sure, he could still get a crack at another big contract. But hey, money in the bank, family taken care of. That is nice money there for Lawrence Butler at age 24. And here's hoping that he just continues to be a badass this year. Let's get into our outfield rankings here.
Should we, before we jump into the rankings, should we talk about the other piece of news that came out literally as we're recording yesterday?
What?
Grayson Rodriguez.
Oh, yeah.
Down to 89 miles an hour. Has a tricep issue. Now he says it's not a big deal, that he wasn't even going full bore.
Right.
This kind of takes him off my board, at least for right now.
Certainly if you've got something going right now, and then, we're in NFBC draft season where there is no IL, and I just don't want to deal with it. When the velo went down and he immediately said, "Oh no, it's fine. Okay, I'll take a player at their word." But then the very next day, it comes out that he was nicked. I'm sorry. It's kind of over for drafting him, especially because he's not cheap. Grayson Rodriguez is not a cheap player to get. So yeah, it scares me. And in the NFBC type universe with no ILs, I'm not taking him. Is there a price point that he could reach? A realistic one, right? Obviously, there, if he goes pick 300 or whatever. Yeah. But let me pull up his ADP right now for Grayson, and then compare that to a reasonable fall and see if you would be there in an IL league. Okay, so he goes 126. If he dropped to late 100s, going around like Shane Baz and Spencer Arrighetti, and let's say 3 ILs, so like a Yahoo type situation, do you get there then? Or are you just completely avoiding Grayson here because you're scared, previous injuries, etc., etc.? Where are you at in leagues where you could actually IL him?
I think I might take him right about there. I think that's actually a pretty good spot. While I like the upside of Baz and Arrighetti, I think that the probability chance that they actually hit it is about as high as maybe Rodriguez being fine. So I'll take the guy who I think has the greater upside and probably greater potential to reach it at some point this year. I feel like this is one of those injuries that they say is nothing, that turns into like a 2-month injury, and you're holding on to him for that time. So if I do, I'm not drafting another one of those kind of guys.
Absolutely agree there. Grayson would be the one that you would take the gamble on. And hey, it's early enough in spring that this could be nothing. Sometimes they are. We remember the ones that aren't, and it gives us pause. And it should. You should play this more cautiously than not. But I want to be clear that hey, we could be talking in 3 weeks, say, hey, remember the Grayson thing? He did get through it nothing was too bad. His velo's back up, and bada bing, bada boom, the people that got a discount are sitting pretty. We don't know that to be the case, but fingers crossed. That said, on the global baseball scale, if they lose him and they added no tangible pitching, sorry, Charlie Morton and Tomoyuki Sagano, you're not enough. If they lose him, season's over in Baltimore. I'm sorry, I'm going to go that far with it because I already think their pitching is suspect enough. And if Grayson is slated to miss a substantial amount of time, aren't they turbo screwed?
I mean, I think considering how good the rest of that division is, I think
That's the
they're
thing.
already in a lot of trouble.
They
So
have no
yeah, like
leeway.
I mean, the Yankees are gonna be the Yankees. I think Boston got better. You
They got
can't,
way better.
I can't imagine Tampa Bay is gonna struggle the way they did.
They still got talent for days.
Yeah, and I think Toronto is gonna rebound. So like the fact that they didn't do anything, and this is one of the reasons why you go out and do something like re-sign Corbin Burns, is because all you are one injury away from it being Zach Eflin and a bunch of bums. Like,
Right.
like you know, no shade to Charlie Morton, but like he's just not the pitcher that he was.
He's 41 at this point. Yeah, you can't lean on him. Grayson has to be the ace. You know, he's got to be like the upside ace, and then Eflin has to be like the workhorse ace, and make sure that he's punching the clock on 6 innings every 5 days. So yeah, this has to be shaking to the core for Orioles fans and management alike. So we'll stay tuned on it. Hopefully, it is something slight, which is what Grayson says, but we know players tend to look at the optimistic side of things as well, which is why you do have to be careful at just taking them at face value. And again, it took a day for us to find out that he was overstating the case. All right, let's get into the outfield tiers again. Let's start with Tommy Edman, who we did discuss at shortstop. Now, that was almost a month ago, 3 weeks ago at this point, and I do not remember what I said, but I had to have said that I was positive on him because I've been positive on Tommy Edman all off season. And so I am excited to draft him. I think he's a fun way to get into the Dodgers lineup without paying too much. And I will point out that the shortstop eligibility is for leagues with lighter eligibility rules because he is just an outfielder in the NFBC universe, which requires 20 games. So to get that shortstop, he just missed it. 18 games. Damn. Couldn't get 2 more there, Dodgers. Come on. Shortstop outfield would have been amazing for Edman if he had it everywhere. But if you play in a league that requires 15 or 10 games, he will have that shortstop. So this is his true position because most leagues are at that 20 eligibility. And like I said, I really like him. He went 6-6 in 37 games with them. That's all he played last year because he was dealing with injury, and he did only hit 237. I think people might see him as like a batting average type guy. They're thinking back to his older St. Louis days. The last 2 years have been 248 and 237, so there's no guarantees there. He needs to get the BABIP back up. They've been light each of the last 2 seasons. I think there is some batting average upside to be a 260s, 270 type guy maybe, but I think you should be paying for like a 240s, 250s, but a little bit of punch and a bunch of speed on a great team. So runs and ribbies, regardless of where Tommy Edman bats, should be solid. What do you think of Edman? Do you like him?
I'm kind of ambivalent on Edman. It's just hard to know what he is coming off the injury. He was amazing in the postseason. Hit 328, 354, 508 with 2 home runs and 5 stolen bases in just 16 games. So like there's part of me that's like, oh, I think he could be that guy because like I mean everybody in LA becomes magical, at least for the Dodgers, not the Angels. So
well, they're not actually in LA. The Californians out there would tell us that they're not actually in LA, and that's why they don't become magical.
I mean, as a Californian myself, I guess I'm a Californian at this point. I've been out here 20 years. LA and Anaheim, same thing, right? So
you're going to piss some people off.
All the LA people are going to be pissed at me.
I'm not saying that. I don't want the ire of the LA folks, but continue on Edman.
Yeah, there's a few things that is a little troubling. Like, I don't think that batting average is going to bounce back a ton necessarily. I think he's probably a 240, 245 kind of hitter.
It's a pretty low BABIP, though. You don't think that just some BABIP regression for Edman, back to the 290s, 300s of those early St. Louis days can't occur for him at age 30?
I mean, I think it'll bounce back a little bit. I just don't know if it's going to bounce back to like a 300 BABIP, maybe like a 280 something.
Okay. I think they could
So
get him into the 250s. I kind of like where the projections are. They got 250s with the low teens homers, 13,
yeah,
14
I can see
type,
that.
and then low 20s steals, which I think there's some upside there. I think that's where he could really, if he's pushing 30 steals for Edman, I think that's where he could really get some extra juice. I just think he's a really solid pick where he's going, and I will give that ADP. It's 193. Like, that's just not a crazy price point to get a piece of the Dodgers lineup. And I know he's toward the bottom, but hey, anywhere in that lineup is a good place to be.
Well, and with how banged up that lineup can get, like
Bingo.
who knows? The problem is he can get banged up too. And the hard
That's
part for
true.
me in doing his projection was like coming to in agreement in my own head on how many plate appearances I think that Tommy Edman's going to have this season.
What did you land on?
I ended up with 591, and that was 14 home runs and 22 stolen bases. So, like, I think he's going to have probably a pretty decent year. Maybe the runs on RBIs aren't amazing because he's at the bottom of the lineup, but it's still, like, the bottom of the Dodgers lineup is still better than, like, probably half of the team's lineups in baseball. So,
Absolutely.
I think he's going to be, a valuable player. I prefer him in the leagues where he is shortstop eligible. You get that infield outfield. I don't know that he's going to play enough games, at least early on in the season, to kind of get that back. I think they're just going to have him patrol out in center. But yeah, I think this is a cheap way to get a part of the Dodgers lineup if you're not as sold on guys like Conforto and Hyseon Kim. But I just not like overly enthused to draft Edman. He's not like in my game plan. It's more of a matter of like, hey, I need some speed at this point that isn't like devoid of other things,
Right.
and then take the gamble on Edman.
Okay. I think that's fair. You don't have to be super geeked. I think some of my love dates back to his time in St. Louis, where I was cashing in those, 13, 30 seasons with a 260 average. I do think that that's at least on the table.
Sure,
But yeah, plan for 13, 25 with a 245 and see where it goes from there with Tommy Edman. All right, let's move to Brandon Nimmo. I think the biggest question right now is, where's he going to bat?
That's not my biggest question.
Okay, well, we'll get into your biggest question, because the reason I say that, though, is like he profiles as a traditional leadoff hitter, but Lindor obviously did very well there. And right now, Roster Resource has Lindor, Soto, Alonso, and then Nimmo at the 4. I don't think that's the end of the world if he bats 4, but if he bats 1, you're looking at triple-digit runs if he can stay healthy. What's your biggest question? If he can stay healthy?
Yeah. If he can stay healthy, that is my biggest question. He's dealing with foot inflammation or ankle inflammation right now. I'm just worried about Nimmo's health.
3 straight 150-plus game seasons, though. So for somebody who dealt with injuries a lot throughout his 20s, and this is why you have to be careful about pigeonholing a player. Again, be mindful of their injury history. No better predictor of injury than previous injury. I fully grant that. But guys can emerge out of it, and after really struggling to stay healthy for 6 seasons in a movie, 151, 152, 151 the last 3 years. But he is dealing with something right now. That's where your concern for Nimmo comes right now.
Yeah, I mean, there is no greater predictor of injury than current injury.
Yeah. Also, that's true too. If you are currently hurt, that is a predictor that you're hurt. So what is he not playing right now? Yeah. So knee inflammation. He's only had 1 Grapefruit League game, slated to return earlier this week, but wasn't quite ready, and that was as of yesterday. So he was slated to return early this week that we're in right now, and it didn't work. So they're trying to get him to that last bit. According to him, it's the last 10% of soreness. So he's like at 90%, and they want him to get to 100. So I think that's a fair concern. Now, is that reflecting in his price?
It definitely reflected in his price during my TGFBI draft because he dropped.
He's at 190. Where did he go in TGFBI there?
Nimmo went in the 12th round of my TGFBI draft.
So that would be in this same range here. There's like 190s, 200s. He's got a wide range right now, 157 to 245. Let me tighten up the band of drafts here real quick to see if that's changing it a bit. Okay, yeah. So now even down to 200 if I do a shorter sample. So he's going a little bit later. Do you take advantage of that for Nimmo? You have a fair concern there, but if it looks like he has enough time to get back, yeah, I tightened it up even more, and he drops down to 215. So Nimmo's price is definitely dropping with the concerns of this injury. Are you willing to take the discount?
I think I am, especially because it doesn't seem like this is like anything like necessarily structural. It's just
Right.
kind of some weird soreness that is going on. So I think I would take the gamble if he had dropped to me in that 12th round. I probably would have taken him because I did get sniped on Dansby Swanson, though we didn't talk about that.
Oh man,
By Tim Canuck again. Dude has just murdered me.
he's just absolutely owning your life right now.
Like, I mean, the amount of times I've had to flip a table because of Tim Canuck in this.
You're running out of tables.
Yeah, this is really, really bad. I've got a lot more room in my office now, but it's been brutal. So yeah, if he had fallen to me at the back end of the 12th round, I definitely would have taken him. I probably should have taken him at the top of the 11th because I do believe in Nimmo. Like I've got a pretty good projection on the guy. So and I think he is just one of these guys that's kind of perpetually underrated.
Agreed.
I think he's, because he doesn't have like a carrying tool necessarily for fantasy, and he's more of a kind of, accumulator type. I think those kind of guys just get downgraded a little bit unfairly. So Nimmo is one of those guys, especially if he does prove some health hero for the next week, that I will definitely be targeting come, my mid to late March drafts.
Yep, I think that makes some sense there with Brandon Nimmo. Just stay tuned on that injury front there. And hey, be ready to take a discount. That you could jump on it now because the price will shoot right back up if he gets back into the Grapefruit League games and starts popping off. People will be like, oh, he's healthy, ready to go, and then boom, back up the board he goes, because being part of that lineup in the upper half of the lineup, whether he's batting 1 or 4, Nimmo's going to have some attraction once he's healthy again. So people will flip on a dime, and so you want to be ready there. All right, let's go to Victor Robles, who's out in Seattle. We talked about how when we were talking about Arozarena, he and Arozarena were basically their moves, and like part of me understands that to a degree. That they did their big moves in the second half of last year. Simple fact is, though, they weren't just 2 players away. I just cannot let them off the hook that they didn't need to do more. Now, you can also look and say, like, okay, Luke Raley had a big second half too. So they were looking at some of the pieces that really went off in the second half and thinking, do we really have enough here? If J-Rod is J-Rod, Cal Raleigh is not tamed by any park in terms of his power, and you're going Robles, J-Rod, Cal Raleigh, Arozarena, Raley as a top 5, maybe that's what they're convincing themselves. There's enough there.
To me, it's just the glaring hole at second base. Like I can even get behind the okay, Jorge Polanco can play third.
Sure.
Mitch
Dylan Moore at second cannot start every day. He cannot hit righties.
Yeah, he's got I think he's like her 188 hitter against right-handed pitching, something like that.
It's unbelievably bad. Like you cannot be starting him every day against righties. Yeah. It just cannot happen. And yet that's
if they just brought in like Tyro Estrada,
even that would have been a substantial improvement for them.
Even Brendan Rodgers, and you know how much I hate Brendan Rodgers.
You can't stand him, and I agree that would have been a positive move. By the way, and I know you probably laughed at it when he said it, but he talked about how maybe getting out of Coors is actually going to help him because of the adjustment between home and road was kind of messing with him. So he's actually kind of excited to be in more of a neutral environment. And I think he even acknowledged that, I know it sounds funny getting out of Coors is going to help me, but he thinks it might. And I'm in. I know you're out on Rodgers, but I even agree here. Even if Seattle had just signed him, even going to that park, it still would have been better than Dylan Moore. He cannot hit righties. We've seen it time and time again. But anyway, Robles, a revelation for them. They scooped him off the waiver wire. He popped off to the point where they even signed him to the 2-year deal and said, hey, this could be our guy. Because believe it or not, folks, Victor Robles is still just 28. I know he's been around in our consciousness for 32 years, so the math doesn't seem to add up, but he is just 28 years old. He put up a 328, 393, 467 slash with the Mariners with 4 homers and 30 steals in 77 games. He went 30 for 31, an absolute revelation. This is what we talk about when we say league winner. People who are picking him up that needed speed, they were winning leagues with him.
Yeah.
Heaven forbid you picked up Robles and Xavier Edwards and you needed average and speed, you won your league because those were two of the best pickups in the summer. So where do we go from here? Robles atop that order. I have a soft spot for him. You think I have a soft spot for Brendan Rodgers? I've always had a soft spot for Victor Robles. I kept going to the well after the 17-28 season in 2019, and I ate a bunch of those 60-something OPS pluses from 20, 21, 22. Usually I was able to get off the board pretty easily because it would go south pretty quickly. It's not like I ate Victor Robles for the whole season, but I kept drafting him. I'm going to kick that football again this year because I think he's fairly priced. Playing time's guaranteed. What do we think of Victor Robles at pick 182?
I don't know that I believe in. Maybe this is just like kind of some PTSD from like drafting him the same way that you did, which was over and over again, in spite of the fact that he would just disappoint. Though, like part of it was like Nationals usage, right? Like they never would move him up the lineup, and you know, if he made a mistake, he would get benched. But I want to believe. I do. I want to believe because, like, yes, stolen bases are much easier to come by than they used to. But like, how many guys at this point in the draft have the ability to lead the majors in stolen bases?
Right. With some other heat around it too. He's not like a power god or anything, but if he can hit 8 to 10 and leading off again, bad line, not the best lineup, but leading off for Seattle, I still think is valuable. You still have J-Rod and Cal Raleigh behind you. Like he's still going to score a bunch of runs. Robles will, if he does pop off the way he did last year, or some semblance thereof. Yeah. I don't need him to be a 140 OPS plus. Frankly, I'll take a 110. Like I think that's enough if he leads off the whole year and can be a plus bat to steal a crap ton of bases.
I mean, in less than 300 plate appearances, he stole 34 bases. Like the easy like duplication there, which you shouldn't do, is available for 70 stolen.
Just tells you how extreme it could be. Again, when we say don't do that, we mean like don't expect it. Don't double it up and go, I'm getting 71.
Instance, I have Robles for 584 plate appearances. 9 home runs, 42 stolen bases. That's a pretty damn good season.
That's,
you know, especially if you need speed at that point in the draft. You know, the hard part for me is I rarely end up on him because, you know, we're going to talk about Jacob Jung here at some point.
Yes.
And you get him later. And I think that Jacob Young's
best shape of his life.
Well, I think his playing time because of his defense is just more guaranteed than if Robles, you know, kind of flops again. So,
wait, you don't think his playing time is guaranteed in the same way? He's a great defender. Now he's not in center; he's in right these days with J-Rod in center. But who are they going to put in? Dominic Calzone? This guy's named after food. Get out of here! Oh, Dominic Canzone. Whatever. Sorry, Dom. I did think that said Calzone there. That was
actually
an honest
met
mistake.
Someone who's related to Dominic Canzone. But yeah, I just feel like Robles is one of those guys that has done this over the course of his career, where he has this quote unquote breakout and then disappears the next year. So
sure,
like,
and
you're
sure right to be cautious.
I'm sure that is part. You have to factor that in as part of the profile, potentially. So
I do think that caution is covered in the price point, though.
Oh, right? Absolutely.
Like, people have not pushed him up to like crazy levels.
You get Jacob Jung later.
You do. He's going to be in the 300s. We're not talking about him for quite some time on this episode.
Yeah. So
your point is well taken there.
I tend to kind of, and honestly, like, if I'm getting to this point in the draft and I am in such dire need of stolen bases that I have to take Victor Robles, I've had a bad draft. Like I have not drafted balanced, right? It's like,
I don't want him to have to be my steal source. I want him to be part of the picture, not somebody that I'm reaching on to say like, okay, if I don't get 30 from Robles, I'm screwed. Because I agree with you. At that point, you've put too much weight on him and you're asking to be hurt.
Yeah, exactly. Because like, while Robles isn't a quote unquote rabbit, he is kind of a quote unquote rabbit. And if you are relying upon 40 stolen bases from a guy that could potentially just disappear again, then that is setting yourself up to be disappointed, right? Like you just
full agree.
I'm hoping I'm not in a position where I have to draft Robles, and I'm hoping that Robles is kind of the kind of guy for me that Jacob Young has been this draft season, which is I just want more stolen bases. I don't need the stolen bases necessarily. Like, I could use 15 or whatever, but like putting on 30 or 40 for me right now guarantees me this, this category.
Yes.
As opposed to like, oh my God, if I don't get these stolen bases right now, there's no way I can win this league.
I'm dead. Exactly. All right, let's move on from Victor Robles. Ceddanne Rafaela. Again, we talked about him at short. Have things where are we at on him right now? Because I know people want to take him out of center and put Roman Anthony in there. I just don't think that the Red Sox are willing to do that yet. They maybe should sooner than later. 79 WRC plus for his career. Great defender. And I'm sure we said that exact same thing on the shortstop episode. He is having a huge spring. How much do you think that saves Rafaela to at least break camp and start in center field? He's hitting 385 with a 201 WRC plus. It's 15 plate appearances. But how much do you think that staves off in Anthony taking his job? Because I think it actually kind of does.
Yeah, I think it probably does. Especially because I don't think Anthony's having. He's fine. He's hitting 308. No,
Campbell's the one who's not having a good spring.
I mean, I think Rafaela's playing time was pretty guaranteed because of that contract and the defense. So I will say that Rafaela's spring is really impressive, not from a straight like numbers perspective on the surface, but the underlying numbers are really, really intriguing. We're talking about a guy who really struggles with in zone contact and swinging outside of the zone. And he's not really doing that. He's walking at a 13% rate right now.
That jumped out to me the most.
He's making his overall contact percentage, so not his zone contact percentage, but his overall contact percentage is 91%. It was 69% last year,
nice.
Which is not
That's
nice.
Not nice.
He had one of the worst, if not the worst, swing strike rate in all of baseball last year at 18.7%. It's 4.3% right now in spring. Now, it is such a small sample, we don't want to overrate it, but these are really, really intriguing things because this is a very similar profile in a lot of ways like Brenton Doyle was, where like, hey, the defense is going to make sure he plays, but he could just absolutely destroy you in batting average. But he's got loud tools. He's fast. He has power in the bat. If he can figure out a way to kind of learn the zone and not swing outside of it so much and make better in-zone contact, then like Ceddanne Rafaela could have a massive breakout. Am I betting on that? No, because I wasn't betting on Brenton Doyle doing that last year. But is it in the realm of possibility? Absolutely. And the price isn't like egregious where you can't take that gamble.
No, I mean, if you want Ceddanne to be your guy, pick 211, shortstop, outfield eligibility, part of an amazing lineup at the bottom of the order, and he's going to be down there. Even with these spring training games, I don't think they're going to rifle him up to the top with Jarren Duran locked up there. But you know, it wouldn't be crazy for somebody to be hyped on Ceddanne Rafaela. I could totally see it. And it's funny you bring up Tim Canuck because he's the one who told me about Ceddanne Rafaela couple years ago. Yeah, I think 2 years ago now. And even told me how to pronounce the name. He's like, keep an eye on this guy. And I did, Tim. And you were right. And a compelling player for sure.
Until I not talk too much about the TGFBI draft, but like we're at a point in this draft, like entering the 14th round, where like if you haven't gotten a shortstop, you're in some trouble.
And you haven't, right? Or did you pivot off of Swanson to get somebody else?
I ended up taking Neto.
Okay.
Which I know he's not going to start the year, but like he's supposedly going to be back, early.
The news has been good, right?
Yeah,
it's been good news at the very least. So maybe hopefully things aren't too bad there for you.
But like the other options at shortstop for me were like Tyler Fitzgerald. We've talked about how much I don't think that is going to work. Trevor Story, who scares the crap out of me. And Carlos Correa, who scares the crap out of me. And then like that's literally it. Like Jordan Lawler's not gonna make this team. Ha-Seong Kim's not gonna make this team. Jose Caballero isn't a starter. Like, I do like Willie Castro, but like he's more of a guy that I want like being able to move around my lineup, not like stuck at one position. Jacob Wilson is empty average. Dylan Moore, we just talked about how bad he is. like Isaiah Kiner for level. Like there's nothing left when you get past like Dansby Swanson. And Ceddanne Rafaela is still on the board. So like I'm not it's hard because I don't like drafting guys like this who don't have good underlying skills, but him hitting
But
well.
you don't have many options, so maybe you have
don't
to.
you don't have a lot of options. And if he makes it back to me at the back end of this 14th round, I'm gonna have a discussion because I've got one outfielder and my only shortstop is Zach Neto's not going to be ready to go at the start of the season. Like I may be forced into making this pick. So again, going back to, I know this is the outfield preview, but like shortstop, like it dries up. There is a reason why you should push up some of those top guys.
Yeah.
And part of me wishes that instead of
That you had
two
done
for
that.
my KDS, I had picked one so I could get Bobby Witt Jr.
Yeah, it's you do have to be careful there, and obviously, like you said, this is outfield preview. But since Ceddanne Rafaela qualifies there, we're using it as a little aside on some shortstop there. Let's talk about a couple Angels who are not in LA; they're in Anaheim. Again, get after Justin for that, LA folks, because I know for some reason you guys get really upset about that, and I'm not the one who said that. That was Justin Mason. Let's talk
it's like
Taylor
the
Ward.
difference between Dallas and Fort Worth, right? Isn't it the same thing?
I think they get pretty upset about that too, but I say F the whole place. I'm not a Dallas Fort Worth person. So if you want to make fun of them or mislabel them, I'm all for it because I don't like the Metroplex personally. But anyway, let's talk about Taylor Ward, a player that I've loved for many years. And frankly, it's gone all right. Like I think my commitment to Taylor Ward has been rewarded decently enough. He's a pretty good player. He's a really fantastic player when he's healthy.
Yeah.
Health has been elusive at times. It was not last year. We got a full season and it was fine. 25-75, 6 chip in steals, 246 average, 73 runs, 75 ribs because the team isn't very good, but always priced appropriately in my opinion. And I think that's the case this year. Pick 180 does not seem untoward for Taylor Ward. How do you feel about him coming into this year?
There are a lot of words right there that were very warty.
I realized that too, and it really wasn't on purpose, I swear.
Okay. Yeah, for me, like, I'm underwhelmed by him. Like, I know there is.
He's underwhelmed by you. How about that?
I'm sure he is. How couldn't you be? But like,
I'm not. Don't worry, Justin. I'm not.
I worry about like the overall strength of this lineup, especially
what Luis Rengifo, George Soler, Mickey Trout, Jan Moncada, Logan Oppie. Come on, these are studs, man.
I mean, like, you just don't know how long Trout's going to be healthy for. You don't know how long Rengifo is going to be healthy for.
Right. No, I know.
Love Soler. And I do.
We're going to talk about him next.
But like, you have injury concerns with Ward, who's a guy who gets banged up quite a bit. Sure. And then you added he could legitimately be alone in this lineup at some point this season. We probably will be alone at some point in this lineup this season.
Not alone in terms of like 8 bad players around him, but just by himself. He's just the one player lineup and they let him bat all 9 times. He's going to tire out. It's going to be tough for Taylor Ward to bat 9 times in a row with ghost runners on and everything.
I have him for 22 home runs and like 7 stolen bases, but like the runs and RBIs aren't inspiring, and I don't think he's a guy that really carries you in any particular category. I just think there's more upside in other guys along the way that I'm probably just staying away from Taylor Ward.
Yeah, there's definitely, you can find some upside, but I think he's a stable piece. I wish I could get more confident in the runs and RBIs, but like you said, Trout, Rengifo, Soler, the guys around him all have concerns about how long they're going to be on the field. If I could get, if you told me that I'm getting 3 guys that are going to play $140 in Trout, Rengifo, and Soler, I could project upper 80s, maybe even low 90s on the runs and ribbies, but I cannot do that in this current case, and that does sting Ward for me. So a guy that I've liked, like I said, quite a bit in past years, but I have not been landing on him because I do agree with you that there's just other guys that add a lot more intrigue and upside, and we're going to get to some of them. But first, we're going to talk about the teammate Jorge Soler there. I know that was an uninspiring pickup for people. They're like, oh, wow, they got Soler. What? That's really going to change the makeup of the team. It was the Griffin Canning deal. He mashes, right? He rips homers, That is the one thing that he does. He did drop from 36 to 21 last year, despite playing virtually the same amount of time. Now, I will point out that that was in San Francisco for the bulk of the season. And even though we know righties don't get hit as hard as lefties, they still get hit. Although he did go from Miami to San Francisco, so maybe the park isn't even a fair, excuse for Soler. He'll be 33 this year. What are we looking at out of Soler coming off of two relatively healthy seasons, despite a track record that has been spotty health wise?
I mean, I think you'll just kind of get this guy who hits like 240 something with a crap ton of home runs as long as he's healthy. I think getting away from San Francisco was obviously something that Soler needed. I want to believe he's going to turn back into this 40 home run hitter, and I think that is still something that could be in the profile. But like, I just can't bet on that. I think he's probably a mid to high 20s homer guy with the potential to go off at some point because it is a pretty decent stadium to hit in.
I was just about to bring that up. It's better than Angel Stadium, better than both the parks he played in last year. Obviously, San Francisco, but also Truist in Atlanta has a 105 park factor for righties on home runs, and Angel Stadium is a 109. So only 4 points, but again, just a better park in general to hit in.
Yeah. So, but I also think he's one of those guys that like he can hit anywhere.
Right.
So it's going to be a
Got
matter
big boy
of
power.
Yeah, it's going to be a matter of Soler can stay healthy himself, being 33 and having a litany of injuries throughout his career, and kind of get back to that 600 plate appearance threshold. Because if he does, then I think there is a potential for him to hit 30 plus bombs. But I'm kind of meeting in the middle of the last two seasons for him, which is 26 home runs and an average that isn't bad, but not overly inspiring. So. But again, he's on this Angels team where, like, I don't know if he can rack up the runs and RBIs in the way that he could have if he'd stayed in Atlanta.
Right. I will say, looking at this player range that he goes in for Jorge Soler, only he and the next guy we're going to talk about are like true power demons.
Yeah.
So after Castellanos at 174, if you're looking for some real punch, it's Soler.
Yeah.
Maybe Tyler O'Neill if you want to gamble on the health, or our next guy, Kerry Bonds, aka Kerry Carpenter, for the Detroit Tigers, who, probably going to lose playing time against lefties, but does so much damage against righties that you don't really care. Big Kerry Bonds fan. Carp was awesome. Health was the only thing that was elusive last year, 87 games. He still ripped 18 homers with a 284 average. Need him to stay healthy this year, not just as a Tigers fan, but for fantasy purposes too, because now you're paying an actual price here at pick 192. And so, he's not that late round sort of, I'll take what I can get from him. You need something here. I really like what he can do. He's got big boy power. I'm not really worried about Comerica. That park cannot tame him. What are we getting out of Kerry Carpenter this year?
So every year there is a player when I do projections that kind of breaks my projections. I have to actually like go and like just tamp things down because he gets crazy. And we'll talk about another one of those.
We'll talk about somebody about that on Monday.
Yeah,
I think.
On Monday, for sure. But Kerry Carpenter was the offensive guy that did that this year. Making my projections when I then ran them through and spit out numbers and stuff like that was like, oh God, I think Kerry Carpenter has the ability to be like a top 25 outfielder.
And you were like, whoa.
Yeah, and I was like, no, I can't do this. Like, the power is immense in Kerry Carpenter. And for a guy with as much power as him, he actually makes pretty good in-zone contact and really good swing decisions. I think there are still some questions about, can he hit left-handed pitching? The Tigers have said this offseason that they want to give him an opportunity to prove that he can do that. So far in spring training, he's hitting well. But Kerry Carpenter may end up being my most drafted outfielder this year because I just think the ADP is too low on him. I just took him when I got sniped on Swanson. Carpenter was the guy I pivoted to, and then I took Neto in the wraparound. I just think he's just got so much power in that bat. And like you said, this is an area in which you get to this point and you don't have enough power, you might be in some trouble. But Kerry Carpenter is one of the guys that can help make up for that. So
could bail you out. Yep.
I haven't projected for 27 home runs, but I honestly think that's very conservative. I think there's a really good shot that Carpenter hits 30 plus bombs this year.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm with you, and it's not just Tigers homerism. The talent is there.
Yeah.
And if they are going to give him the opportunity to try to hit against some lefties there to get those supplemental runs and ribbies and the occasional homer as well, by not losing that volume, then yeah, I do think 30 is in play, and I just love it. And Magic age 27, ready to go for Kerry Carpenter. I definitely think that the price point at 192 is more than fair. I've got absolutely no problem paying that. Unfortunately, the other Tiger who goes around this general area, he is dropping a bit, but I paired him up here just because it was the two Tigers together. Parker Meadows is down at 250 right now, and now facing some injury missed time. Does that take him off your board?
Yeah, I think just because there is no real concrete timeline, it's not a matter of like, hey, like he's gonna be back in middle of April, or like
Right.
there is no time, and the lack of timeline scares me. I also think he might have been getting overdrafted to begin with a little bit, just because we've seen these uneven performances from him where he starts out really slow and then picks it up, or even gets demoted down to the minor leagues. And I don't feel like the ADP at earlier on in the draft season was reflecting kind of the downside on a guy like Meadows. So I wasn't probably paying the price, but I'm definitely not paying the price now that he is dealing with this injury that
is a nerve issue, by the way, in his right arm. And again, like you said, timetable uncertain. You do not know what's going on, and so it could take a short time, a couple of weeks, and it could take 6 to 7 weeks.
It's kind of a bummer because like it's hard to find decent leadoff men at this point in the draft, and so he was actually a guy that could have represented a value if you needed runs at this point in the draft. But unfortunately, I just don't think you can rely upon him to be ready for the start of the season. Now, if you have IL spots, I think you take the gamble. But if you only have like one IL spot or no IL spots, I just don't see how you could draft him.
I'm with you there on Parker Meadows. I'm excited. I was very excited wanting to take him. But at this point, I think you got to tap the brakes and kind of see where this goes. And there's still time, right? A lot of people's drafts aren't going to be for 2-3 weeks, and you can get some good news and then maybe jump back in, play it by ear, but stay fully tuned in. If you're a Parker Meadows person that wants to draft him, stay fully tuned into the news to figure out where it's at, because you could get a big discount too, right? If the price keeps dropping and then you do have multiple IL spots and he's going, pick 300 instead of mid 200s, then I think you can get back in and it wouldn't be so crazy. Let's go from my favorite team to your favorite team. And honestly, that was inadvertent, but I like the way that that's set up there by putting these two duos from our two favorite teams here. Heliot Ramos is a guy that I really like, man. And I know that you're not quite as sold. When we talked about Ramos and Matos last year, because they were both doing some things at the same time, it was like, hey, these two prospects that were expected to be monsters, finally doing something. Ramos is much better. By the way, Matos is not the other guy we're going to talk about. It's Jung Hoo Lee, if I implied that it was going to be Matos. Although he did get announced as probably going to be the fourth outfielder, Matos. So he's going to make the team and be maybe Yastrzemski's short side platoon. But Ramos is the guy that is of interest. Now, he is dealing with a little bit of an oblique. And I say a little bit because it's supposed to be a lighter one, that there are grades to these things with obliques. Not everyone is run for the hills and freak out. And I believe he debuted, right? He made the spring debut. So he's back. I think you could comfortably draft Ramos if you're a fan. But he popped off last year. 22 homers in 121 games. Had a nice little breakout rookie campaign. Are you in on your boy Heliot Ramos? What did your projections tell you?
So this is another one of those guys where like I did the projections on him and I was kind of pleasantly surprised because I had this thought of who Ramos was in my head, and I think he made some massive changes halfway through the season last year that could mean that he is kind of a different type of player who can make more contact with his own. Power's never really been in question for Ramos. I think that the issue for Ramos has been like, hey, can he make consistent contact in the zone? Because that is what he's struggled with in the upper levels of the minors and then his time in the majors. But about halfway through the season, he made a little change to his swing, and all of a sudden he started actually making contact and not sacrificing power to do that. And so I do think that this is a guy that can kind of carry over what he did at the back end of 2024 into 2025. The problems with Ramos really aren't Ramos's problems. It's his lineup construction in the park that he sits in. It's just a bad park for power and for guys who don't have prodigious power. And I don't think that Ramos is one of those guys. And yes, it is better for righties than it is for lefties, but it's not good. It's still
Sure.
the worst park in baseball to hit for power in, even for right-handed hitters, or at least
third worst for righties over the last 3 years. Guardians and Pirates are worse. But yeah, to your point, it's bad.
It's bad, and that lineup around him is not good either. So I definitely am more open to drafting Ramos, and I have drafted Ramos, but I don't know that I'm going to end up with him. He's not a target for me. Like I have him below guys like Soler. Like if I need power, I'm probably going to go Soler, or I'm going to go Kerry Carpenter. I'm very rarely going to go Ramos.
Definitely going to go Carb. I don't know that I would go Soler though. I think I would go with Ramos. I think he can hit mid-20s. Yeah, I think he does more than you get some chip in steals that Soler's not going to get. And I think the batting average could be better. So I still think the composite on an Heliot Ramos versus Soler.
Honestly, I'm probably going to end up with a guy who goes later, and that's usually Carpenter, anyways. Right?
Yeah, so. And again, I'll take Carpenter over Ramos for sure. But looking at it on the auction calculator, they got him as the 45th outfielder, Ramos, and he goes 48th. Okay, so that's right in line with projections and everything. And again, price point 195 doesn't seem out of pocket. If he's your guy, Heliot Ramos, you can comfortably go for him.
There's also another guy who I think is being somewhat overlooked, and I like that you can get rounds later than all these guys that we're going to talk about in a few tiers from now. Okay. That I'm going to pass up for almost every time on these guys. I'm actually probably going to take him in my TGFBI draft.
So when we get to him, make sure you reference this and say, hey, when I was talking about passing on Ramos and Soler, this is the guy. But in the meantime, let's talk about the grandson of wind, an amazing nickname for Jung Hoo Lee. I was so geeked about my last pick of the Gladiator draft before he signed, because I know him from OOTP, and you guys know I love to bring up my OOTP stuff. I knew who this guy was coming over from the KBO, or excuse me, from Japan. No, he is Japanese, but he played in Korea, so I had that right. Sorry.
Yes.
He came over from the KBO, and I was just super geeked. I was like, yes, I'm gonna draft this guy in a Gladiator, last pick, and then he pops off, gets signed, and I'm like, yes, that's awesome. I'm excited about him, and he gets hurt. 37 games in, busts up his shoulder, and missed the rest of the year. So where are we at on Jung Hoo Lee now? Pick 233, fully healthy, ready to have a full season, and ready to break out for your Giants, or tap the brakes?
Did you say that he is Japanese? Because he is Korean. He's Korean from... He played in Korea. He's
born in Japan.
No, he was born in Seoul.
Well, then Baseball Reference misled me. My apologies. Okay.
Yeah, he was born in Seoul. He is just...
They said he's from Nagoya, Japan. So I'm an asshole. My fault. B-Ref. I knew he played in the KBO, though. Anyway, Jung Hoo Lee, the Korean gentleman. How are we feeling about him this year?
So he's one of those guys, again, like that kind of surprised me in my projections. Like, I didn't think I was going to be a Jung Hoo Lee guy. I didn't think the projections were going to look favorably upon him. But he actually grades out better than I think pretty much everybody that we've talked about, except for Kerry, Carpenter, and Brandon Nimmo today.
Let's go.
Like he isn't going. I don't think he's gonna do like anything spectacularly, because like he doesn't have very much power. But I think it is like
it's the whole profile.
It is the combination of everything, and he's going to be leading off San Francisco. So, like, this is the guy. Like, if you
is he going to be? Sorry to interrupt you, but on that, but is he going to be leading off over late night Lamont?
Oh no, sorry, he's probably going to be batting second. They're gonna
but I'm fine with that, by the way. Like second or third, depending on where they put Adames. Like, he's going to be top third of the order for Jung Hoo Lee. Go ahead.
And he just does a lot of everything, right? Like, or not a lot, a little bit of everything. Like, I think he's probably teens homers. I think he's probably, teens stolen bases, but a good amount of runs. And dude can just hit. Like, and he's actually a better defender than I thought he was. Which one of the knocks on him coming over was like, he actually seems like he might be a poor defender, but I don't think that's true. He had a 93% zone contact in his small sample last year at the majors. That's kind of elite. And so for me, like, I didn't think he would be a guy that I liked, but I think especially if you need batting average, you need runs at this
Yes.
point in the draft. Like, I think this, and those are two of the harder things to find
The
at this point
batting
in the
average
draft.
late. You do not
Yeah,
find guys who can hit a competent 280
yeah.
without it being super empty this late. And I
And
think it's just that Jung Hoo Lee's a bit of an unknown, and I think he could hit a 280 for y'all.
I think he can hit 290 or 300, honestly. Like,
Absolutely.
I don't know that
I'm using 280 as almost like my projection though. Like
yeah,
that's kind of like where I'm expecting him to be.
I have him projected for 284, but like, I do think that he's one of these guys that could hit 300 over the course of a full season. It wouldn't surprise me. Get some good BABIP luck. He's got enough speed where he can outrun things. So I Lee's one of those guys that I haven't even ended up drafting him because he hasn't fit the build that I need at that point. But I can definitely see myself ending up with him, especially in leagues like auction leagues where you're kind of getting towards the middle back end of a draft and
Hmm.
people aren't overly excited for a guy like that.
No, I agree. I am very excited for Jung Hoo Lee, and I cannot wait to see what he does in his first full year here. It sucked that the injury, I think he was reaching up for
Yeah.
a catch and ripped his shoulder, and he was out for the year. But I'm excited to see him get going. He's having a great spring, which I'm not putting too much stock in one way or the other, but it's nice to see that he's at least cooking in Arizona there. And pick 232, I think, is cheap. I mean, and even if you look at his min and max, 206, 254, he's going after pick 200, and you just don't find batting average that has a little bit of speed and a little bit of pop to go with it that late in drafts. So sign me up for Jung Hoo Lee all day. All right, moving on to our next tier. And again, these tiers are just breaking up groups of players here because we're basically we're not even going by the ADP at this point. I'm starting to group players by teammates and things. So we're getting through outfield here. In fact, we have a whole Cardinals tier coming up because they have so many guys in a particular range there that I have 5 Cardinals that we're going to discuss. But before that, we're going to talk about a couple twins here, Byron Buxton and Matt Wallner and Trevor Warnock. So a trio of twins. Which is not how twins generally work. But let's talk about Byron Buxton. He is now down at pick 204. We've been doing this one for a while here, but I think everyone kind of realizes where we're at with Buxton, right? He's no
Yeah.
longer super overdrafted. He did go 18-7 last year with a nice 279 average, but he played 102 games. So same old, same old. Funny thing is, that was the second highest games played total of his career. It is just so unfortunate that we've gotten to age 31 here and he just never plays. I have to expect that you're seeing more of the same from the games played perspective. But what do you think about the performance? Can we get that sort of performance in our 90 to 100 games out of Buxton? Or do we go back to the previous years, some of which were a little bit lighter in the batting average, 207 and 224 the 2 years before last year?
I mean, he's having a good spring, which is really good to see. Like, only striking out at an 8% clip and walking at a 23% clip. It's only 13 plate appearances.
Yeah.
So, but the most important thing is he's currently healthy, which has
Yes.
been just the elusive part for him. Only 300. He hasn't hit 400 plate appearances in a season since 2017.
And that's the only time he did it. 511 in
Yeah.
2017, and then you don't get over 385 until last year, and it was 388.
I mean,
So it's crazy. It's
what's it?
crazy for Buxton.
It's actually funny because, like, in some ways, this is finally the year where you should be able to go, like, hey, like, the price attached to him is so much lower.
Hmm.
But is it really that low considering, like, how many plate appearances he's actually racked up over the last 7 years? Like,
Well,
it's,
it is low if you believe in last year's line.
yeah,
18-7, 279, good for a 142 WRC plus. He did need a 338 BABIP to do that because the plate skills were still pretty weak there. 26% K, 5% walk. Otherwise, it's kind of just like market value for
yeah.
350 plate appearances of like lesser work. So yeah,
So,
it's not even that cheap of a price on Buxton.
like, two things. One, this is why I do my own projections, right? Because if you look at the projection systems every single projection system except for Zips projects him for more plate appearances than he's had
I
since
don't
28.
understand that on guys like this. I've never understand. And projections are
I
supposed to be like sobering looks at things. How the hell are we getting to 433 and 511 on the plate appearances?
because I think that projection systems can't overcome some issues because they're just done by a computer. And this is why, like, if you're gonna use a different projection system, which I think 99% of people are gonna like use a different projection system than like just their own head, adjust the playing time. This is why Tanner Bell's sheet is so valuable, is
Well, that's
because
where you
he can,
win, is if you can
yeah,
nail playing time.
yeah, is like, and this is why, like, people like, Mike Kurland, and Jason Martinez are so valuable in the industry, is because like they just focus solely on playing time, right? Like
Right.
who's going to play, where they're going to play, things like that. But like there is no rationale for projecting Byron Buxton for 500 plate appearances, and multiple projection systems have him projected for 500 plate appearances. I don't, and uh, I have him projected for 380 plate appearances. That drops him just extremely low in my projections. That being said, like this is one of those where like you can kind of draft him and then just drop him when he gets hurt. He's healthy right now. So I don't have a problem in most formats drafting a guy like Buxton, especially with IL spots. But in NFBC, I just can't touch him, and that's where I play a lot of my games. So I don't think
Right.
I'm going to end up with Byron Buxton anywhere, but totally understand people going for it.
Yep. I'm going to co-sign all of that there with Bucks, and I am rooting for him. I really am. I like him as a player. I know he's on like a rival team. I don't care. I want him to
Yeah,
do well. I want him to stay healthy. I'd love for him to spike his second 500 plate appearance season
I would too.
because he's a lot of fun to watch out there. He still has electric defense, great power, transcendent, speed potential too. Obviously, I don't think they're going to run him like that's something that if he does to stay healthy, I imagine they have mostly a yellow light on him, but his sprint speed has not dimmed. He's still
Yeah.
97th percentile, but you just don't want to take the extra risk there with the way his body has struggled to hold up to Major League Baseball. Let's talk Matt Wallner because he's a really interesting player to look at here.
I was gonna say part of it too is the Twins are the last team in
Yes, they
just don't
just
run.
don't run in general, but I think they probably also put an extra
Yeah.
layer of bubble wrap on Buxton there by
Mhm.
saying you can get the occasional steal, man, but you can't just run wild.
Yeah.
Like because that would be a case if he was a healthy guy where I could see him running even though the team doesn't because he's
Yeah.
so good, but they have to be more cautious with him.
He could
All
be
right,
the
let's talk.
Matt Chapman of the Twins.
I get what you're saying, and people might not, by the way. So we should elaborate that he had 16 steals last year, and it was like 80% of the team's total. Is
It
that's
was,
what you're
I think it was
referencing?
like 26% of the Giants stolen bases
Yeah, he had
last year were
15,
Matt Chapman.
and of
And
all people to be that guy, it was
the
Matt
Giants had 68.
Chapman.
Like it was
Unbelievable.
yeah.
Unbelievable. Yeah, so he could be Buxton could have been the Twins Matt Chapman there
Mhm.
if he wasn't always injured. All right, let's talk about Matt Wallner.
Yeah.
Crazy season last year.
Mhm.
Only played 75 games, but what he did in that time put up a 155 WRC plus, which he did the same thing the year before. 76 games, 143 WRC plus, but he did it differently. He ran a 389 BABIP, which still only gave him a 259 average because my man strikes out 36% of the time. So he's got crazy power, strikes the ball remarkably well to run that crazy BABIP, but still just strikes out way too much that you can't even get a good batting average. So if the BABIP comes down, which it's been consistent, he's a career 359, but you're playing with a little bit of fire there that if it comes down to, I don't know, 330 or lower even, aren't you looking at like a 220 type average from Matt Wallner? But the power's there. Do we get a full season this year? Where are you at on Matt Wallner? He's a very confusing guy to me.
Okay, so Wallner, and I mean, I think we should just loop in Trevor Larnach. I know
He's next. Yeah, bring him in.
I think we just need to talk about both these guys in
Absolutely.
kind of the same breath because I think they're super similar. Now Larnach I think has a better overall hit tool, and I don't think he's
And
gonna
he's the
strike out.
discount version. Let me give the
Yeah.
ADPs. Larnach's at 330 and Wallner's up at 261. So if you like If you want diet Wallner, that's just Larnach 80 picks
Yeah,
cheaper
and I prefer Larnach
or
at the
60
price,
picks. I know how to
right?
count.
But both these guys are going to platoon. They're not going to hit against lefties. They're not good against lefties.
It was actually
Um,
70 picks. I don't know how to count. Sorry.
but I think both are actually really good in daily moves leagues. So like this is
Yes.
more of a format thing, or in like NFPC where you can kind of try to optimize when the Twins are going up against a string of righties.
Do you want to explain real quick the NFBC roster setup there?
So yeah, so NFBC is you get to make offensive roster moves twice a week. So
Yeah.
on Mondays and then again on Fridays.
So Monday through Thursday and then the weekend. So you
Yeah.
can't do it perfectly, but you can get these platoon guys and set it up pretty nicely. They got two lefties coming up on a weekend 3-game set. Boom, you take Wallner and Larnach out. And so yeah, you can maneuver these guys, and so they do have value in NFBC.
Yeah. Same with like Colorado guys, right? Like
Yes.
if they've got a road series on a Friday or a Thursday, like you can go, hey, I'm going to take these guys out, but they're at home the rest of the week or the beginning of the week. I play them there. So both these guys, when they're up against right-handed pitching, are fantastic, and I would be totally fine drafting them and using them kind of in their spots. Wallner's another one of these guys, very similar to like Kerry Carpenter, who kind of broke the projections a little bit in terms of just how much power he has in the bat. And so like I've got both of Larnach and Wallner for about 500 plate appearances.
Okay.
But I have, Wallner hitting 25 home runs with decent RBIs in those 500 plate appearances. I think he's going to be pretty good. He's just frustrating if you play in a weak league because if they're facing, 3 lefties, he's not going to play in those games.
So you have to adjust to that.
Again, this is why I like him more in a daily lineups format where I can kind of optimize him with another guy off of my bench that will play kind of in my lineup the other times when he's up against lefties. In a weekly league, he drops quite a bit because you just can't optimize him as well.
There are those occasional leagues you'll get into a Wallner room. Now this is a clear outlier, but his min is 149, and I'm looking at his little dots on his profile. That doesn't happen very often, but he will go late 100s, early 200s in the wrong room. And I say wrong because if you like him, you're gonna have to jump him. So you can't know if you're in one of those rooms. So if you really like Wallner, you probably got to jump. That's why I like Larnach, because that's never happening with him.
Yeah,
he's kind of forgotten between the two, and he's not as good. He is a lesser version, but I'll take my chances. He doesn't quite have as much power, right?
No, the power isn't as good, but I think he's just a better overall player.
I do agree with that. Yes.
He walks at a double-digit rate. He struck out a 22% rate last year.
If he holds some of those gains, because Larnach has had 30+ K rates as well. If he holds some of those gains, then yes, he's a more dynamic player than Wallner, but Wallner has the better pure power. That's what I should say. They're not not that he's a lesser player overall for Larnach.
And let's not forget, like Larnach was a top 50 prospect at one point. Like this is, he's never learned how to hit lefties. I don't think they're going to even give him the opportunity. But like his underlying skills last year were really good. 87% zone contact, only swung outside of the zone about a quarter of the time. 11% swinging strike rate. Like I believe the gains that we saw in terms of the strikeout rate from a guy like Larnach, and he hit 259, which is right around where I think that kind of true talent level is. I think what he did last year is who he is. Now, like I said, he does not have the power of Wallner, but I'm not saying he's powerless either. Like I think Larnach is a guy that's going to have 500 plate appearances, hit fourth in a pretty damn good Twins lineup when it's healthy.
It is good when they're healthy, absolutely.
And I think he can hit 20 plus bombs. So like with a decent batting average. So like Larnach's one of my favorite guys kind of going later in the draft that I think that people should be targeting.
To that point, you were gassing him up in a pod episode that you did with Joe, where you guys were looking at category targets after pick 300. Larnach was your guy for RBIs, and I'm with you. I really like Larnach. I've been on him from the jump, and didn't really quite get going until last year. A few false starts, 21, 22, and 23, but a nice little hit last year, and I think he could be an even bigger hit this year. So I really like him. I like Wallner too, but I'm probably just going to take the discounted version of him in Trevor Larnach. All right, let's
And this
go.
division is filled with right-handed pitching. Like, this is not a like lefty laden like
No,
division.
you've got
So
you got Reagans and
yep,
Skubal, right? So you have two
yep,
studs on those two teams. Chris Bubich is kind of interesting, so that's three. I don't think the Guardians have one unless Cantillo
no, they
makes the team,
don't.
and he's
And
not. And then the White Sox, who cares if they do? Because they're probably terrible anyway.
Martin Perez is the only
Oh
lefty on the
yeah,
White
okay,
Sox. Yeah, yeah.
their
So
ace. Their,
yeah,
how
exactly.
dare I besmirch their
Yeah,
ace? So we're
exactly.
really
So
not looking at many lefties there outside of the relievers. But as far as starters go, Warnock and Wallner are going to be getting a lot of
yeah.
starts. All right, let's go to your boy. I should have looped him in with some of those with Tyler O'Neill and Colton Cowser yesterday when we were talking Orioles. But we'll talk Cedric Mullins here, and I paired him with one of your best buddies
It's
right after that, TJ
actually like
Friedl.
the rest of this tier is like just filled with Mike dudes this year.
Yeah, we
So
got we
like,
got a lot of Justin guys here. So let's start with Said the Entertainer. Obviously, for those that are maybe new to the show, we call him Justin's guy because you were on him before the breakout, before the big
yeah,
30-30 breakout. You identified it one of your bigger hits ever. And you
yeah.
were loud and proud about it, except you didn't take him in the main. Way to go, dipshit. But he went 30-30, and he's been fine since, right? He hasn't done that again, but he has not been a bad player. In fact, the follow-up year was still a 4-WAR, 16-34, 89 run, 258 season. Little bit dicey the last 2 years, but the price has come down in concert with it. Actually, I'm not giving enough credit last year. 18-32 is still pretty
Yeah.
good. He only hit 234 though. But again, the price is where it should be for something like that. Where do we go with Cedric Mullins this year? Pick 219. Is it still more of the same, or is he going to start getting crowded out there in Baltimore?
I think that is the concern because I think we're getting to a point now where they're not going to let him hit lefties as often because there's just so
He
many
stopped
guys
switch hitting
there.
a few years ago. For those that
Yeah,
don't remember that, he is
which is
just a
which is
lefty hitting now.
why he had the breakout. So,
Yes.
uh, like I still think he's a pretty good bet right here, and I do have him above ADP in my projections. But I think there's just a lot more risk. I think we've had 2 straight seasons in which he hasn't reached 500 plate appearances.
Hmm.
You still get a lot of juice without getting to 500 plate appearances. I mean, 1832
For
is
499, yeah,
yeah.
that's hot. Now he played
Yeah.
147 games because those are partial games there. You can tell
Mhm.
when it's that many plate appearances in 147 games, that's partial games either coming out or coming in, as a defensive sub or leaving because a lefty comes in. But there's been different things there that are taking him out. But 1832, like you said, that's hot for limited playing time.
Yeah, and I just think that there is still a lot of upside in Cedric Mullins. The problem is there is a lot more downside than there's been in previous or entering previous seasons. And so that is kind of the scary part for me. I haven't ended up with Cedric Mullins in any draft. Doesn't mean I won't, but he's no longer a guy that I feel like I have to leave my draft with. He's more of a guy that like, hey, does he fit my roster construction? Do I need some speed with a little bit of power here? And can I take the batting average hit? Because he's at
Right.
232 like the last 2 seasons. And there's not, or 233, 234 the last 2 seasons. And I don't know that there is a lot of reason to believe that that is going to change.
The
I think
BABIPs have been low though at 271 and 261. Is that something that Ced's doing? Because he has the speed to, maybe outrun a decent BABIP.
yeah.
Is he getting unlucky, or is it just part of his hit profile that has generated those weak BABIPs?
I think part of it is the deader ball. I think he's a guy that he doesn't have prodigious power. And so like, and he's not a guy who hits the ball on the ground a ton, right? He's had like 30% ground ball rates for the last few years.
So you can't flex
And
that speed if it's not on the
yeah,
ground.
so it's a lot of, hey, these were going over the fence, but now with the deader ball, these aren't going over the fence. Now they are bringing in the fences, but he's a lefty, so that's not going to help him
Right.
as much as it's going to help other guys. But ultimately, like I just think he should, because he's still a good defender, because he is a guy that does have speed, does have power. Like I think he's a worthy gamble. I just think there's more risk to his profile than there has been previously.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair on Cedric Mullins, but where he goes is fair. And if you need a bit of pop with some great speed in a wonderful lineup, Cedric Mullins can get the job done for you. TJ Friedl, one of your other big guys, injuries have been an issue here, and that's part of what really undercut him last year. He played just 85 games because he plays kind of that all-out hair on fire type style. And I think there were a few times, I think it was last year that this happened, and then it finally, unfortunately, was kind of the big hit. But he would run into the wall a few times, and I would message you instantly. I was like, "Your guy died. He died. It
Yeah.
was unbelievable." And he'd get up, pop up, bat the next inning. I'm like, "Okay, he's fine." And it just kept happening, and then it finally got him. So he played 85 games. It wasn't the best season, 88 WRC plus. I'm willing to give him a washout, injury washout type season though, for 229 BABIP. He still went 13-9 in those 85 games, so the production was still there. Didn't strike out more, 15%. I look at a 229 BABIP and I say that that's just painfully unlucky for TJ Friedl. He's 29 this year. I think he's really interesting to bet on. He goes at pick 256. That feels too cheap to me. He's atop that lineup. We love the Cincinnati Park. The lineup is solid when they're healthy. They need to stay healthy. But how do we feel about Friedl? Are you still in on this guy?
I am, because I think he is just who he is, which is a really good player that gets hurt. And so the shallower your league, the more likely I am to draft a TJ Friedl. I've got him right kind of in the same spot in my projections as Cedric Mullins, because I think there's risk to both their profiles in terms of playing time if if Mullins struggles or if Friedl gets hurt. It's hard. I have not ended up with Friedl in any drafts this year, because again, there are guys going behind him
It's a
that
fun
I really,
area.
really like. But
Yeah.
I do. I mean, if he puts together 600 plate appearances, like, I think those are 600 monster plate appearances, and
Right.
just for just getting it out there, like, I projected him for 567 plate appearances, 15 home runs, 23 stolen bases. And I think those 23 stolen bases may be a little bit light in terms of the projection if I'm giving him that many plate appearances. So he's still fairly young and has, or actually, I guess he's 29. I didn't realize how young
He's
he
still on the
was.
right side of 30, but yeah, not
Yeah.
a baby. Not a baby.
But really good skills, 15% strikeout rate last year, 8% walk rate, and that's pretty much in line with what he's done throughout his career. Like, I just think I don't know that we're going to get another 2023, but I also don't want to say that's off the table.
No, 1827 in 556 plate appearances. I think it's just about staying healthy. I'm really not that scared of the 226 average because I don't believe in the 229 BABIP for Friedl.
Yeah.
He has to stay healthy though, and I wonder if maybe Terry Francona getting in there says, "Hey, love the way you play, the hair on fire. Never want to encourage somebody to not play all out." But when you see that giant green wall out there, it's always going to win. It's always going to win against you. So maybe stop running into it, once a week because it is going to cost you playing time. But yeah, I do like Friedl atop that lineup. I think 255, 256 is priced to buy, especially if you need power speed in that area. Let's talk about Jake McCarthy. Power speed in that area. Jake McCarthy goes pick 230. So he's a little bit more of an expensive version of Friedl, but in that general area on a good team, not nearly the same quality of park though. And I do think at least that he could lose more playing time than somebody like Friedl. Although it is a little tough because the guy who would be most likely to maybe take some of that McCarthy playing time is Alek Thomas, who's also a lefty. So there's not like an obvious platoon there because Grichuk's just going to platoon with Pavin Smith. And we'll talk about Pavin Smith later. But McCarthy had the like surge season in 2022. I think he was like a big waiver pickup for people. Totally flopped in 2023. In another 99 games. There was 99 games each of those first 2 years. He went from 116 to 78 in the WRC plus. And then last year, it was kind of fine. 825 on the homers steals, 285 average, which is really nice, and a 110 WRC plus as part of the highest scoring offense in the league. Where do we go from here with Jake McCarthy? Do you like him at pick 230, or is he somebody that you're not landing on because of the depth of this tier?
So this is the reason why I'm not ending up with Mullins.
You're going McCarthy over Mullins and Friedl.
Yeah, this is one of my dudes this year. I think there is a ton of potential in his bat, and one of the issues with McCarthy over the last few years was just playing time, and I think he's got his playing time locked now. He is very reliant on getting kind of a decent BABIP because he puts the ball on the ground so freaking much. And I don't think there's a lot of power potential here, right? He's got a 9-degree launch angle last year, which was actually the best of his career. And he's had 50% ground ball rates pretty much every year in the major leagues. Like, there's not going to be much power, but there is going to be a lot of speed. And this is a guy that could easily steal 40 bases with, like, 9-10 home runs and a pretty good batting average on a team that was the best offensive team in baseball, that he's going to be hitting towards the top of this lineup. I like Jake McCarthy quite a bit, and he's been a massive target for me in drafts this year.
I could totally see that because, again, you don't find average all that late. 230 is not like uber late, but it's late enough for somebody that can reasonably hit 280. 283, 285, 2 of the last 3 years. He had that 243 sandwiched in the middle in the ugly 2023 season, but he bounced back. So I think it's reasonable to project him for like a 275 with 280 still being on the table. Absolutely, for sure. And then just tons of SBs. He's a remarkably efficient runner as well. 3, 4, and 6 caught stealings with 23, 26, and 25 steals these last 3 years. So even in the ugly season, he went 26 for 40. It's just that the batting average cratered, and that was the downside on McCarthy. I totally get being in here. I think it's a fair price. There's a lot of talent here. And so if McCarthy's who you land on in this tier, I think that is more than reasonable. I do want to go ahead.
To your point, like before, there's no one to platoon with him here. Like they don't have a right-handed outfield bat, because they're not going to put Grichuk out in the outfield, I don't think. Right?
No. It's Pavin Smith, Grichuk for the DH spot. Yeah. And he's the only like righty who would reasonably take plate appearances, and Grichuk wouldn't be playing center anyway. That'd be terrible. So it's Alek Thomas, who I do like and I still want to love, but those are two lefties, and they're kind of a Spider-Man meme at each other. And right now McCarthy's the better version of Thomas, because Thomas hasn't been able to take the step forward. So I get why it's McCarthy's job, and Thomas is just kind of the fourth outfielder right now. Let's bring in their teammate, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., who brings a totally different profile to the table, but another guy who later in drafts, they go right by each other, by the way, 222 and 230 for Gurriel and McCarthy. They are two outfielders that go in a row, so there's a little pick gap, but they're outfielders 53 and 54. Another guy who you're getting some average from a little bit later in the draft. If you drafted, some Alonso types early and you're looking to supplement your average, you could do a double dip on the D-backs here. If you went Gurriel McCarthy to get a little bit of power, nothing crazy, a little bit of power from Gurriel and a chip in few homers from McCarthy, but a ton of speed from McCarthy, and then big batting average from both, that would be a good way to fix your batting average in the middle of the draft here. 31 years old for Gurriel, coming off of, just quality season after quality season. He doesn't wow you, but he can get to 20-some homers. He only had 18 last year, but 24 the year before, and a good batting average. Career 279, more of the same from Gurriel Jr.?
I'm a little concerned on Gurriel, and so I have not drafted him anywhere, mostly because the Diamondbacks have said they're going to manage him in season more.
What the hell does that mean? I mean, I know what it means, but why?
They're going to give him. I apparently he has got some issue, some
more days off coming. Got it.
Yeah, I don't know.
So that's where Alek Thomas's playing time is going to come from.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm a little concerned about this, and I just don't know that he's going to be able to volume in the way that he's volumed in the past.
Okay, wait. Sorry, I got to challenge you though, because
I guess he hasn't volumed.
He hasn't really volumed, right? Except for 2023 when he had 592. He's been a guy who's already been a little bit lower because of injury. They're going to do it purposefully this year. It's been because of injury in the past. Isn't it just going to be more of the same from Gurriel?
Yeah, but it's just uninspiring. That's
fine. That I can understand, but I don't think that this news should greatly change your outlook on him, that they're going to rest him a little bit. If anything, it makes my Alek Thomas late round picks a little bit more appealing.
Yeah, I mean, and I projected him for 550, which is right around where he has been. But that comes to 17 home runs and 7 stolen bases with 271. So it's kind of boring.
And that's fine. You're not wrong there. But if you need the average infusion at that part of the draft,
I get it.
And you've drafted a Schwarber, an Alonso, those lugs that crush the homers, but hit your average. He can be that guy. But I agree. You don't need to bend over backwards going for him. I think there are more compelling guys. It's a team construction sort of pick with Gurriel Jr., but don't let this news scare you off. He's going to play the same amount of time he's been playing. It's just going to be planned instead of hopefully not because of injury. So, okay, I think that's fine. And maybe that news will bring his price down because 220 I don't think is egregious. But if it trickles him down to say like the 230s, 240s because people get nervous, then I'd be happy with that. 243 is Gurriel Jr.'s max. And yeah, so start floating that news around. Start promoting that, folks. More days off. We don't want Gurriel. Let's get him down to 250 because then I can really get on board with taking the shot there. All right, let's move on to a guy that, hey, took a couple of years for my guy to come through, but JJ Bleday, I'm a big fan. We didn't talk about him with Rooker and Butler because he doesn't go in that same range, but he's a player. He's a player, and he had a nice season last year, 20 homers, big doubles machine, and I know that's more for like a points league that you would care about that. It still puts you on second base to score runs. Like there's still fantasy value to it in 5x5, but not directly. But he went 20-60 on the homers and ribbies, 243 average, but now they're going to the minor league park. Can JJ Bleday jump a level here in year? I guess this is his fourth major league season, but this is his second full season that's coming up. So what do we think about Bleday at age 27? Magical breakout incoming, yes?
I feel like it is. I do feel like this is the magical.
Not because he's 27, but because he's building on a great season last year and he's going to a minor league park.
He's going to a minor league park. And I think on a lot of teams, Bleday would be a platoon bat. But I think with the Athletics, I don't think he is. I think he's just going to play every day in center field. They'll eat the kind of badness against left-handed pitching. But I think he's going to feast against right-handed pitching, and moving to that park is going to be great for him. I think this is a JJ Bleday breakout year. And,
let's go. Took a step forward against lefties last year. I want to add that real quick. Took a step forward in the power, let me say. He still hit 216, which is obviously terrible. But he was hitting 150s in his first 2 years. So even the 216 was a step forward. But I'm focused more on the power. He did hit 6 homers, 9 doubles, good for a 448 slug. If he can just be competent, like he got a 714 OPS. If he can get like a 680, I think they'll take that because of the defense. And those supplemental plate appearances will help. So continue on. What were your projections for Bleday this year?
Bleday, I have hitting 23 home runs with 3 stolen bases, a 242, but I think a good amount of runs scored in RBIs.
That's where I think the jump comes, is the runs and ribbies going up. He was 74-60 on runs ribbies last year. I think we can get into the 80s with the runs and the upper 70s, maybe even low 80s with the ribbies, because this is a competent lineup. It's not a stud lineup, but he's the guy hitting behind Butler and Rooker. That's that's runners on base all day long, baby. So yeah, I think Bleday can really push the ribbies up. I think I mixed that up. I said the runs would go. I think the ribbies will go up, and those could push up to the 80s. The runs will remain to be seen. Maybe another 74 this year, but I think he could go 80 something ribbies because of the guys in front of him.
I really like the top half of this lineup. Like
Me too.
It is a bunch of names, but like there are a bunch of names I like. It's Butler, Rooker, Bleday, Langeliers, Soderstrom, and whatever you think of Zach Geloff. Like that top 5 is actually pretty decent there. And even the 6th guy in that, like he's gonna get his homers and steals. So like it's gonna be a fun team to watch.
Isn't there some juice on Geloff right now that he made a change some things? Like I really didn't like him, but I think I can't remember what it was. So very unuseful to bring that up. But I thought there was some juice going around that maybe Geloff is changing some things to try to improve because
let me check Jeff's Mining the News, because I'm sure if
it's there, that's where it would be. Or if it's out there, then he would have.
He altered his batting stance.
See, I didn't just dream that. That was real. And we'll see if it translates, because then that would deepen the lineup a bit more. And then even the bottom of the order, like, is not a star level Seth Brown, Gio Urshela, Jacob Wilson, but Wilson keeps the ball in play a ton. So, that could translate into some sneaky batting average. Brown is kind of your prototypical lefty.
Wilson's one of those guys that wouldn't surprise me if he won a batting title.
Right. Absolutely. Empty as hell, but why pay for Luis Ariz when Jacob Wilson is available?
Yeah,
And I'm,
exactly.
I'm not even joking about that. Like,
Yeah.
you couldn't pay me to go for a rise. I'd rather just get Jacob Wilson if I'm going to get empty batting average. All right, we got to talk about one of the biggest busts of 2024, and that is Nolan Jones. One of the easiest ones to see coming, though, too, right? And I'm
Yeah.
not back padding here because who didn't have him on a bust list?
A
Oh,
lot of
no,
people,
duh.
he was going in like the fourth, fifth rounds of
I know,
drafts.
but he was
Like,
still on every. That was the weird conundrum, was that he was on every bus list, yet kept going in the top 80 picks. But who didn't see a 401 BABIP with a 30% K rate falling off? Well, like you said, the people who were drafting him at around pick 80. After that 2020 season, totally cratered. Now, I will give him some pass because it was also an injury washout. I
yeah.
don't think the skills would have been there even if he had played, but there is a little bit of like, okay, we'll give him some pass there. But he hit 227. The BABIP went down to 333, which is reasonable. Like, he was never going to be 401 again, and you saw how damaging, how important that BABIP was to the batting average. And he went 3-5 on the homers and steals in the 297 plate appearances. It was just a nightmare. Is it a buyback now that the price has tanked down to 260, or are you still nervous about Nolan Jones in Colorado?
I mean, I'm still nervous, but at this point, like, isn't it worth the gamble? Like,
Yeah,
this is such an easy drop if it's not working.
I gotta share. I gotta share
Yeah,
just in case. I
I
want to get in
haven't,
just in
but
case.
I do think, like, if you were a Nolan Jones believer last year, you should not be changing that based on a season in which he was just ravaged by back issues.
Yes,
He's healthy right now. Now, I was not a Nolan Jones believer. I was one of the
same.
people leading the charge on, like, he's going way too high. This is a really, really bad, bust potential here. And I was right. But that being said, like, this is the thing about value, and you're getting a guy that was going in the fourth, fifth rounds of drafts last year after pick 250. Like,
Yeah,
that is a gamble that is fine to take. I'm probably not going to take it because I don't think much has changed necessarily in the profile. I will say, though, that in the limited time that we had last year with Nolan Jones, the underlying metrics were a lot better. He had an 84% zone contact, which is just below league average. So,
okay.
like, that is somewhat intriguing for me for a guy who in his breakout season was at a 75% zone
Right.
contact. So there is part of me that goes, hey, like, we should gamble on this. I haven't yet, but I'm not shutting the door on Nolan Jones, especially now that he appears to be healthy.
Yeah, pick 260. He's healthy. There is like power and speed skill there. He takes his walks, 12% walk. He still kept that up last year as well.
But part of
And
the
he's
problem with his strikeout rate is he takes too many walks. He is
that,
too passive.
it is a passivity thing. It's not an overpowered, has
No.
no idea what's going on and flailing and everything. That is a good point there. And maybe they can make an adjustment there and say, hey, be a bit more aggressive, man. Like, we love the walks, but you don't need to walk every damn time. Attack a bit more, get the strikeout rate down to
And
25%, even if it costs you a few points on the walks, because you're going to get more production.
And to that point, his swing rate in spring, now it is a super small sample, obviously, but his swing rate in spring is 10% higher than it was last year.
Maybe it's been a concerted effort. And even though the results aren't there, it's a process thing that they're working on with him to say, hey, get more comfortable attacking. We don't want to completely dissuade your patience, but you're to the point of passivity right now, and that's a
Yeah.
great point on Nolan Jones. Pick 260, not a bad buyback, and I totally agree with you that if you liked him last year, do not quit him now, because now's the time to cash back in and get your discount and get your makeup from last year.
This is very much like the Christopher Morel argument. It's like, at least this year you're not having to pay for it, and you can drop it real
Exactly.
fast.
Exactly. All right, let's talk about the Cardinals because I got 5 Cardinals here. A couple that we've discussed at other positions, but curious where you're at on them as a follow-up because we haven't talked about Alec Burleson since the first base episode, and I don't even know if he has true first base. No, actually, that was a low games played qualification that he was able to fit there. So we're going to start with him. Then we'll have Brendan Donovan, Lars Nootbaar, Jordan Walker, and Victor Scott II. So the Cardinals get their own tier here. Burleson is somebody I do like. Now, he's almost certainly going to be platooned, but he's going to be the strong side. Like a Luke and Baker or Thomas Sajaci are going to take his verse lefty plate appearances, but that's okay. I think he can be kind of a boring, like 270 average with teens homers in 450 to 500 plate appearances. What do you think of Alec Burleson?
I like Burleson a lot, actually. Like, I feel like
He's a quality hitter.
I feel like people are completely overlooking what he did last season, which was like, yeah, like he's gonna platoon, and there's gonna be times where he comes out of the lineup, late in the game if they're facing lefties and stuff. But like he still found a way to reach 595 plate appearances last year. Like they still got him in quite a bit, and I think he's projected to hit like second in this lineup, isn't he? Like I think
We got him down
him.
to 6 right now because
Oh,
Nootbaar's
okay.
healthy. So it's Wynn,
Oh,
Nootbaar, Wilson Contreras, Arenado, Donovan, Burleson,
but
Walker,
still, like
Gorman, Herrera.
I mean, I didn't give him like a crap ton of plate appearances. I don't think. Let me double check that before I put my
Burleson
foot in my
also had
mouth.
9 steals, which is hilarious because, like,
Yeah.
he
I,
has a 10th percentile sprint speed. You don't need sprint speed to get some steals.
no, I have him for 545 plate appearances, 19 home
Okay.
runs, 8 stolen bases, and 272 batting average. This is another one of these guys. Like, yes, he doesn't play
It's
every
like
day, but
Gurriel.
especially in daily moves lineups where you can optimize, or in
Hmm.
NFBC where you can trade optimize, like getting the late batting average, I think is very valuable. And like, yes, maybe he's not projected to hit second in this lineup with Nootbaar, but how long is Nootbaar going to be healthy for?
Shut
So
up
like,
all year.
I love Nootbaar and
I
I
do
want him to be
too.
healthy, but you
But
can't project that.
I know his
So
flaws. Absolutely. I
I
understand.
I think Burleson is underrated in the market.
I think so too. And he did bat a lot of second last year. He goes around pick 235, 236. But his max pick is 296. So there's drafts where he falls because he is kind of boring. And I think people don't really jump out to get Burleson. So I think you can find yourself in rooms where he's going in the late 200s as opposed to 250 pick. And that's why I really, really like Burleson because I like the batting average with a bit of pop. I don't know if the speed is going to hold. Not that 9 was crazy, but if he gets you 5, 6, 7, like that's fine. I'll take the little extra contribution there from somebody that I'm not necessarily expecting it from. He makes great contact consistently. And I know that similar to Minnesota, we clown this team for not doing anything, but I also understand why they're running it back. Like this is a solid 1 to 9 lineup. It doesn't jump off the page at you. It's not like superstar laden, but their bottom 3 is Jordan Walker, Nolan Gorman, and Ivan Herrera. Like you can project a world where all 3 of them are
Yeah.
really strong, and that's your 7, 8, 9. That just kind of shows you the depth. So on the one hand, I get that people are clowning them for doing nothing this year. They should have done something, especially to the pitching. But
Mhm.
as far as the lineup goes, it's a solid 1 to 9, and I like Alec Burleson. Brendan Donovan, Mister Utility. He has true outfield and second base, I believe. Yeah, and that's we
Mhm.
talked about him at second base, and I probably just said I like him. He's solid. He's not flashy or special, but he gets the job done. Infield, outfield. I don't think our opinions have changed on Donovan since we talked about him
No.
in the part 3 preview. It was actually a month to the day though, so it has been a month since we talked about him. But I think he's just more of the same from last year for Donovan.
An accumulator that gives you good batting average late. Like
Bingo.
he's not going to light up the stat sheet uh in terms of power or speed, but like he is just very dependable. He's going to play every day. He's got the dual eligibility, which is nice, but it is boring. So like in 10s and 12s, you're probably not drafting Brendan Donovan, but in
Probably
15,
not.
he's a great glue guy.
Or like a reserve guy at most, but pick 260 in a 15 teamer. Nice glue piece. I agree. My boy Newt, our boy, you're a fan as well.
Yeah.
I love him. Can he stay healthy? That is the question because I think the talent is there and obviously so, but 108, 117, and 109, those are his games played totals the last 3 years. I'm in for one more. He goes around pick 270, yeah, right around pick 270. I'm in for one more year on Newt Bar, but if I get another low 100s game output, then I'm out. What say you about our boy Newt?
Everything's shaping up for this to be the year for Newt Bar, if he can stay healthy. It's just a matter of staying healthy. There's
Hmm.
nobody on this roster right now that they can platoon with him in center field. So like the fears of him being a strong side platoon guy, I think are overblown because like Lucan Baker and Thomas Segis are
Sajc. I know it's weird, but it
whatever.
is
Yeah, no,
Sajc.
I'm not learning his name. Um, Like they're not.
Breakout year coming. You're underrating Cardinals devil magic. Thomas Ajaysi going to make you regret saying that.
I should. I probably will regret that. Actually, he's only 23, so like he could definitely like break out. And I like
Michael Ciani can play a true center. In fact, he's a brilliant defender, but he bats left.
But he's a lefty. Yeah,
exactly.
So like,
and he's a dreadful hitter at that too.
Yeah, so like I think there is a really good opportunity for Nootbaar here if he can stay healthy, and that's just the big if. He is yet to have a season with more than 503 plate appearances. He only had 405 last year.
Mm-hmm.
I projected him for where did I project Nootbaar?
700,
550.
But
that's 550 with 17 home runs and 13 stolen bases and 264 batting average. And a good amount of runs scored, because I think he'll be at the in that 2-hole in St. Louis. So I like Nootbaar a lot. I haven't landed on him yet this year because again, I usually at this point in the draft I'm looking for something in particular, and it's hopefully not batting average since it's so hard to find. But
it's a deep group, so I get it, right? Like a lot of these guys we've talked about, he's in the same range. So I totally understand not necessarily landing on him a bunch. I will not leave draft season with 0 Newts, though. Can't do it. I got to get one.
Yeah.
All right. Our next Cardinal is Jordan Walker, who I hinted at, he'll be batting at the bottom of the order. I think he got nicked. So let me check the status on that. He left after busting up his knee. Did he hurt it on a sprinkler? Did I hear that right?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Love that that's still happening in Major League Baseball. Imaging on the knee comes back clean, so it's a little inflammation, hopefully nothing too crazy. This is a guy who came up with all the hype in the world. It looks the part. I get Derek Lee vibes looking at him, like he just cuts that Derek Lee figure at 6'6", 250, but he has not hit like Derek Lee at all. In fact, he's hit pretty poorly. He does have a 104 WRC plus combined for his career at 640. Basically has a full season of Major League Baseball under his belt. 643 plate appearances, 21-8 with a 255, which isn't terrible, but the hype machine was off the train or off the tracks. And last year things went totally awry. 51 games of terrible work. Where do we go from here in year 3 for Jordan Walker?
Man, I go back and forth. Like my projection on him is actually pretty enticing to take a gamble on him.
Pick 293 as well. Prices come down.
Yeah, like I got him for 24 home runs, 6 stolen bases, 259 batting average, which would be like a pretty juicy line considering where he's going. But then you kind of see what he's doing in spring, and yes, it is a very, very small sample. So I will say that
you're not encouraged by a 53% K rate.
Yeah, like he's striking out at a 53% rate, and his swinging strike rate is like 17 or 18% right now, 17.2%. Like, oh man,
it's 15 plate appearances, but it's just funny to see a 53% K rate.
It's just
like my man, what are you doing up there? Just flailing at literally everything.
Made a swing change this offseason, which is one of the things that had me buying.
It's not working.
Hey, it's not working yet. So I don't want to give up on him. I'm willing to take a gamble, especially in 12-team leagues where like I feel like, hey, if it doesn't work out, I can drop him really, really fast.
Sure.
But in 15s where you're going to be relying on this guy as like 4th outfielder, or maybe even a 3rd outfielder in some kind of constructions, like I don't think you should do that. Like right now, like I've talked about like my TGFBI team. I just took my first outfielder last round, right? In the
crazy, by the way. Who was that number 1 outfielder of yours?
Kerry Carpenter.
Okay. So you got a superstar. You got a super duper star.
4 outfielders.
You're going to be living in these last 2 tiers that we've been discussing.
And I am, and I'm okay with that because I actually really like a lot of these guys.
Right.
That being said, like, should I be relying on a guy like Jordan Walker to be my outfielder 3? I don't think I should.
No, I think he does need to be your 4 to take the chance. So you have to have a little bit more. Yeah, 4 or 5. If you built your outfield up a bit and you want to take the gamble, I get it. I'm not going to quit him completely. But between the 2 that we just discussed, he and Nootbaar, it's Nootbaar by a mile for me personally. I based on the way you talked about him, I'm assuming you feel the same way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
So sorry, Jordan Walker, we're not quite back in just yet, but I'm pulling for you. I really am. Just because I
I
don't
am.
draft a guy doesn't mean I'm not pulling for him. I want him to do well. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, in terms of like expectation of categories that you're looking for, is Victor Scott in the second. I mentioned that Michael Ciani's currently penciled in on the bench for us at Roster Resource, which means Victor Scott has to go back to the minors. They're Spider-Man memeing at each other for sure. I know I
Mhm.
overuse that a lot to describe two similar players, but it just works. And Victor Scott and Michael Ciani are the same player, brilliant, speedy defenders that can't hit a lick. And Victor Scott is the one that's on the outside looking in right now. However, he is having a remarkable spring, and I do wonder if that would be enough to earn him the job as the fourth outfielder over Ciani, or would they rather him be in the minors getting everyday burn so that when they do need a guy more consistently, then Victor Scott can come up? I don't know. I think that's to be determined, but he is, again, tearing the cover off the ball. 262 WRC plus, 4 for 5 on the bases in 6 games, even has a homer. He's got a homer double and a triple so far. Where are we at on Victor Scott? Do you take him in any league at this point? Let me see where he's going real quick before you answered that. Pick 350. So he's much cheaper than the rest of his Cardinals brethren for good reason. Is that cheap enough?
I not for me. Um,
Same.
I just don't think that he is a very good hitter in general. And I love the speed. I do think he could steal 30 bases if he got full time playing time. And I actually had him for like 500 plus plate appearances. I just so far in spring he actually looks really good. Like so, I think if Jordan Walker doesn't turn things around, Jordan Walker could be the one that ends up back in the minor leagues, and Victor Scott is on this team with Ciani still as the fourth. So um, I may need to kind of change my perception of like, hey, I think Scott has the leg up right now over Walker on this team. Like, what has Walker done that he needs to be on this roster and not in AAA? Kind of learning how to not strike out at a 50% clip or whatever it is. So,
Yeah,
so
something to monitor throughout spring here. Let's
yeah,
figure out where these two guys go. They could flip their production, on a dime. There's still
yeah.
plenty of time, and these are both small samples. But yeah, Victor Scott is compelling, and he's having another big spring. I get the draw of the raw speed. If he can hit a lick, he's going crazy on the bases for you. Not my type of guy, but I do understand why he at least stays on people's radars. All
Yeah.
right, let's go to our next group here, and we'll start with another guy that Paul Sporer absolutely loves. Cool to refer to yourself in the third person, you big old dork. Evan Carter, pick 275. Hey, at least I don't have to pay a 1.25 price that I did last year like a giant
Yeah.
dumbass. And hey, you were on it. You told me not to do it. You didn't like him. You had a lot of negative things to say, and I didn't want to hear it. I buried my head in the sand a little bit on his flaws,
Well,
and
I
he did
like,
get hurt, but I
and
don't
that,
even
and that
I
that
don't
is
even think that takes me off the hook though. I really
it
don't.
doesn't take you off the hook, but like I do kind of watch away 2024, and
It was only 45 games, right? It could have
I'm
gone a
not
way
claiming
different way.
victory on Evan Carter because he had a back issue that had him
Right.
sidelined. Now, this is one of the reasons why I would not be drafting Evan Carter, is because now on top of all the flaws that I saw coming into last year, he now has a back issue, and back issues don't magically just disappear on their own usually.
He
So,
he did say that he needs to be a lot more in tune with listening to his body. He's one of these guys that wants to play through things and push it, and he realizes that playing at the major league level where you're going all out, that's going to make issues worse, not
and who
better.
doesn't
Like
love a 22-year-old that needs to manage his body?
that's fair, but he's still 22. He's still
Yeah,
22.
and I'm not like saying like you should be completely out on Evan
Pick
Carter.
275 now. I got him in TARF. That's probably going to be it for me. So I have a taste in a league that I really care about. And so if he pops off, I got him. I don't think I need to go get a bunch of Evan Carter this year. I am a
No.
little bit burned from last year. And for the same reason that you're talking about with the health piece. If he just washed out and he was just bad and didn't have a like degenerative back, I might still be in as gung ho as I was last year. Instead, he's my fourth outfielder. Behind some dicey guys. Say is awesome, but then Trout, Taylor Ward, Evan Carter. So maybe
Yeah,
he's.
I don't love
I
that.
might
I
have some
don't love that
expectation.
grouping. Yeah.
Shut up. It's awesome. Johnny DeLuca here to save the day. But I think I got my Evan Carter share just in case he gets back. If he's healthy, I still think this is a really good player who can go easy double-double, like push 20-20 possibly, but he needs to stay healthy. And that's the simple fact is we just don't know if he can and will, but he is their center fielder right now, unencumbered if his body cooperates.
I don't even know if that is 100% true. What do you think his career average is versus left-handed pitching?
5.005.
You're actually really close. It's 0.081. He is truly terrible against. Now it's super small sample because he, came up late and then he missed a lot of time last year. But this is something he struggled with in the minor leagues.
True.
I think he's a platoon bat.
So another Sporer fave can platoon with him, Leody Taveras.
Yeah, and I think that is what will end up happening. Plus, they want to manage him anyways physically.
Right.
So now you're talking about a guy who has not proven that he can be like a real major league bat. And he has a back issue, and he's got.
I don't like all this cold water going on Evan Carter.
This is a lot of red
I'm pouting right now
on Evan Carter. I still think there is talent here. I think he could mash against right-handed pitching when he's healthy. I just think there's so many red flags. I'm staying away. I need him to prove something to me first before. And I think a lot of people are still remembering that hot stretch when he came up,
right?
And then performed in the playoffs during the World Series run. And they're not actually looking at the totality of what Evan Carter has been in the minor leagues and what he's been in the major leagues, which is a guy who cannot hit left-handed pitching and now has a back issue.
I will say Leody not amazing against lefties, so maybe not the best platoon, but he is he would be the option because I don't think John. Well,
he's at least good defensively.
Yeah, exactly. He can definitely hold the position, which I think would help him earn time.
I don't think it would necessarily be a strict platoon. I think it's more of a matter of like, hey, we need to make sure that Carter's only playing 60% of the time because of his back.
Right. They could also move Wyatt to center and get Ezekiel Duran in. They have some options.
Yeah.
So they could do that to get Carter out against lefties. Yeah, like I said, I think I've got my share just in case. Yeah. But he's going around all these other guys that we're talking about at pick 275, and I think I'm just going to get more shares of those particular guys, whether it's one of the twins that we were talking about, Nootbaar, Bleday, some of the TJ Friedl's a little bit more expensive. I think I just paid the premium on him, premium relative to Carter, 20 picks more. So yeah, I'm just not going to get a bunch this year. I learned my lesson, and there's just enough nerves with the other issues that hamper him. All right, let's talk about a couple of Milwaukee Brewers. I don't think their ADPs are close, but I bunched them together because they're teammates. Garrett Mitchell goes at 244. Yeah, and Sal Frelick goes all the way down at 353. But I want to talk about both here because it's two notable and interesting Milwaukee Brewers outfielders. Let's start with Mitchell because he's the much more fantasy relevant guy, at least in terms of the market saying pick 244 for him. He's another guy, though, who's battled some health issues. He's a true, legit center fielder. What? Some is a nice way to put it, but maybe a little too light. But only played 69 games last year. Again, that's not nice. We need more than 69. 8-11 with a 255 average and a 126 WRC plus. So we saw a glimpse of like this can be hot, but can he stay healthy and actually play? That's the question. Is 244 a fair enough price on Garrett Mitchell for you to take that chance? Or do you share some of the concerns that you do with Carter about like, is this guy ever going to stay healthy type of vibe for Garrett Mitchell?
I feel like Garrett Mitchell is just a different version of Byron Buxton. Like, hey, yeah, on a per plate appearance basis, he can be amazing. But how many plate appearances are we really projecting for Garrett Mitchell? Now, I think at this point in the draft,
I mean, I'll put him down for 450. Understanding that like he's never reached that in the majors,
but I am for 403.
Okay, so we're not that far off.
And like it's a decent 403, 10 home runs, 18 stolen bases, 232 batting average. But he strikes out too much.
Yes.
There is power, there is speed in this profile. I could see like, hey, this is a guy, if he can just stay on the field, like he could have a massive breakout. And I'm pretty sure he's a pretty good defender.
He's a great defender.
Yeah.
So and Frelick's even better, by the way, who we're going to get to.
Yeah.
I believe. I might have that wrong, but I think they're both quality defenders.
I think people are excited about Mitchell again. And this definitely feels like Charlie Brown trying to kick a football.
Yeah.
It just like, now at this price, you take the gamble, and if it doesn't work, especially in a 10 or a 12, like you should
Is that a
definitely
fair enough
take
price? Is that cheap enough? 244 for Garrett Mitchell?
in a 10
Is a
or a 12,
lot.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, in a 10 or
In
12 where you
in
can
a
replace
10
them
year
more easily.
in a 10-team league, you're drafting like 250 people. So like you're
Right,
literally
okay.
taking Garrett Mitchell in the last round. Like
Good
in a
point.
12, you're talking about a guy who's probably starting off your bench.
Right.
You can drop him really easily. You don't need to throw him on the IL. You can just drop him and then pick him back up.
Right. In a 15, that's
I
round
can't do
16, 17,
Yeah, no,
where
I
like
can't
you
do
need
it.
those guys to play. Like that's
Yeah.
there's some expectation there in that draft or in that round, and that is a little bit tougher for Garrett Mitchell because you're kind of betting on the come. Both had great defensive profiles last year as far as their prospect profiles. It did have Mitchell with a much better defensive profile, but Frelick seems to have at the major league level dialed up what the prospect expectations were for. So I was right there, both quality defenders. But yeah, Mitchell, I get it if he's your guy. And we have a lot of guys in this range here that we've talked about that are Justin and my guys. Mitchell doesn't quite hit that radar for us, but if he's one of your guys in this range, I get it, and I'm not going to dissuade people from taking him if he's your TJ Friedl of this group or whomever that might be, because I get it. The upside is there. You're betting on some health, and you're hoping that maybe can tone down the strikeouts a little bit. At least he walks to help counter it. So again, he's not completely overmatched in the zone. He just 32% a little bit much. Let's go to Sal Frelick. Again, much cheaper, 110 picks cheaper at 350. But, you know, some speed, a little bit of batting average-ish. Not much power to speak of. In fact, only hit 2 homers last year. 0.76 ISO. So a much different profile. But do we like Sal Frelick as sort of a bench type guy? Let's see, 350. Yeah, that's picked around 24. So like your first bench guy. Any interest in Frelick this year?
In deeper leagues, yes. Sal Frelick is I'm doing this off the top of my head, so I could be wrong, but I want to say he was like 5th or 6th in Major League Baseball in zone contact last year.
Ooh, okay.
Now, the reason why that doesn't translate to great averages is because he does not hit the ball hard at all. Now, he put on 20 pounds of muscle this offseason.
Best shape of his life.
And he looks like he put on some muscle. He's still kind of a little guy. And he does not elevate the ball nearly enough. And while he is not hitting as many ground balls this spring, he's mostly turned that into line drive. So I don't think there's like a big power spike coming, but like he could be one of these guys that he's got speed, and if he can hit for batting average because he is hitting the ball a little bit harder,
right,
and playing every day, I could see like a 270 kind of 280 batting average ish guy with a fair amount of stolen bases on this team. He had
25 plus
year.
perhaps.
Yeah, like I like him as like a bench outfielder in a 15. I think that this is a guy that I think is completely overlooked because there are these quote unquote sexier options. But I think he's probably a lot more stable of an option than a guy like Garrett Mitchell going like almost 100 picks later.
110 picks later. So yeah, Sal Frelick is interesting. They flirted with some third base last year. He only ended up playing 2 games there, but third base is still kind of open. Now I'm a Caleb Durbin guy, so I'm hoping he takes the job, but we have Oliver Dunn penciled in right now. And I wonder if they flirt with that situation with Frelick a little bit more this year, maybe get him some third base reps as well, so that he's playing every day, whether it's third or left. We haven't heard anything on that again, and it was only 2 games last year, but at least it's on the table to keep Frelick in the lineup. So yeah, I pick 350. I got no problem with that. If you need some late speed, I do think Frelick can be your dude there. All right, let's go to Jesus Sanchez. Miami sucks. We know that, right? There's just not much to get excited about there, but there's a couple guys. I like Xavier Edwards, and Jesus Sanchez is one of the other ones I like. There's not much beyond that, but Sanchez is somebody I've been rooting for these last several years, and he finally took a step last year because he added some speed to go with the pop that we've been getting. We've been getting teens power now for 4 years, but he dropped 16 steals to go with it last year. So he went 18-16 with a 252. Nothing that like jumps off the page as like, holy smokes, my league dynamics totally changed because I got Jesus Sanchez. But he was very cheap last year, and he's still pretty affordable at pick 260. Where do we go from here with Jesus Sanchez? Plus, I'm going to add in before you answer, he's going to be 27, should be on the trade block, right? There's no, like, they're getting close to running out of their team control with him. So maybe it's time to trade him to a much better team as well. So what do you think of Sanchez?
All right, so this is the dude I referenced earlier that I
Okay.
really really like. I think there is a lot to love in Jesus Sanchez. Finally got over the 500 plate appearance plateau last season. I don't think he's going to platoon or anything like that. He was blocked off weirdly in Miami for the last few years. Like they would just not, they just kept going with all these other guys. Well, now you have like your battle versus like, Dane Myers and Kyle Stowers and
Oh, watch
Derek
out. Wait.
Hill.
Stowers is the other guy I have a little bit of intrigue for. He's like our last outfielder on the list that we're going to talk about in like 3
But
hours.
he's not stopping. I mean, he's
No, no,
actually
no, no,
going to play
no.
alongside.
I
So
think they should both play, but I do like Stowers a
yeah,
smidgerino.
I think there's a lot of power in this bat. In Sanchez's bat, you look at his, kind of the exit velocities. He had a 117 max exit velocity and almost 93 mile an hour average exit velocity. Has barreled the ball at a 12% rate each of the last 2 years. Had a 51% hard hit percentage. Yes, there's not much around him in Miami, and he doesn't elevate the ball quite as much as I would like to see him do. That being said, I think there's a lot to love here in Sanchez, and I could see a massive breakout at some point. And I would love for them to trade him to a better park.
That'd be amazing because any team would be better from a lineup standpoint, and virtually any team would be better from a park standpoint for Jesus Sanchez. I did overstate how little time they have left with him. He's not a free agent until after 2027, so they still have a couple more years. But that doesn't mean that they can't trade him because they can maybe even get more with the team control aspect, right? Like so
Yeah,
you can maybe spice up that deal by saying, hey, you're going to get multiple years of Jesus Sanchez. But yeah, we'll see what they do there. But even if he stays there all year, batting at the top of the order, it's a terrible order, but at least he's going to play every day. And I think 2020 is on the table for Jesus Sanchez.
I do too.
All right, next up. Been talking about this guy forever, and people are still hyping him up. And I don't know, man. You talk about Lucy kick or Charlie Brown kicking the football and Lucy moving it. There is no more better example for that guy than Joe freaking Adele, right? Like we've been kicking that football. He's kind of like Victor Robles, where it's like, oh, he's got to be 31, right? No, he's 26, dude. And we've been talking about Joe Adele since Nam. Holy crap, he's been around forever. Did take a step forward last year. Credit where it's due. He went 2015, but it came with a 207 average, 280 OBP, and he was 15 for 25 on the bases. So Ron Washington was just like, you can keep running. I don't care. You're really bad at it, but
Yeah.
I'll just let you keep doing it. And there's no real reason for him to stop Adele this year, right? But can we get more out of the hitting, or is this just going to be accumulator with horrendous batting average for Joe Adele? What do you think?
I mean, he's gotten better. Like he
Well,
went
because
from a
how could you not from where
yeah,
he
exactly.
was?
And that as like he went from a 74% zone contact to a 79% zone contact to an 82%. I can live with 82%. Like I
Right. So
really
can I.
if he's at 82% zone contact, like I think there's a reasonable chance for him to hit like 230, maybe even 240 if he gets some good BABIP luck. And there is just power and speed for days in this bet. That being said, like I do think he's a quad A player, but he's playing on a quad A team, and I think that is like I think that is what is helping him kind of continue his relevancy in fantasy. But I don't see that changing. Like I still think they're going to give him every opportunity to get to 600 plate appearances and kind of figure things out. And I think this is a really interesting upside gamble at this point in the draft.
Yeah, I mean it's around pick 300, pick 294, so
Yeah.
I can't really crush people who are still taking that shot for the power and speed. I can crush the person who took his min pick of 249 or 247. What were you doing, person? But you know, those that are getting him past pick 300 or late 200s, fine. I'm not going to quibble too much. I've been on the Joe Adele train, so I'm not throwing stones, from my
I have
glass
too.
house here.
I led that train for a long time.
Yeah, I loved him, in because he looks the part too, right? We were talking about this with Jordan Walker. Joe Adele looks the part of a superstar center fielder, and it just hasn't fully come together just yet. there is still a tinge of hope that things could make a massive turn. I don't know where that would come from necessarily, figuring out righties a bit for sure and striking out a lot less, but it's wish casting. So
Yeah.
just take what you're going to get, plan for bad batting average with power and speed, and go from there. If he spikes you a 250 average, you are singing to the heavens on that because you
Hmm.
should be planning for probably a 210, 220 type number. All right, let's talk about the guy you hinted at. I think you mentioned Jacob Young earlier, and
Yeah.
he, like Sal Frelick, has put on a bunch of muscle. Now, he's starting to look the part. He already has the defensive piece that guaranteed his playing time. I don't shut the hell up about the Nats lineup. You know that. 33 steals, 256 average with guaranteed PT because of his defense. Only hit 3 homers. I don't think he's going to zoom up to 20 just because of
No.
this muscle that he put on. But if I get 8 to 10, so it's not like a complete zero at the, it's not actively hurting me a bunch with the power. I find that super compelling. What can we get here out of Jacob Young this year? Are you in on the 25-year-old
Yeah.
stud center fielder?
It's one of my favorite guys to draft late for speed. I don't think like the adding the muscle I actually dislike. I understand like hey like he's trying to power the ball a little bit more, but I don't want you to
Sure.
power the ball. I want you to use your amazing in zone contact and speed to get on base and steal me a bunch of
Well,
bases.
maybe
Like
he needs to use that muscle for more line drive, so it's not like the Frelick situation that you were
yeah,
saying, where it's like he hits the ball too weakly. So give me a bunch of line drives so that maybe Jacob Young could hit like a 270, 280, because then
yeah,
you can do 3 homers again. If I can get 275 average with 40 steals, I'll take that and 0 homers, to be honest.
yeah. And I mean I have Young. Where's my Young projection? Dun, 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 dun. I don't know where I
Oh,
have
I'm
it.
on the clock in TGFBI.
Oh, I have him for 4 home runs and 31 stolen bases. Like he is a rabbit, and he's not.
Yes.
You do not want to plan your draft around drafting a rabbit,
But
right?
he's a
But
late rabbit, and I'm
yes,
anti-rabbit, as you well know. But I want to be clear that people say, "Well, why are you gassing him up, Spore? You hate rabbits." 310 is a lot different than like
yeah,
when Billy Hamilton was like a top 100 pick, for God's sakes.
top 30 pick at one point. Yeah, I mean,
So gross.
so, but yeah, I mean, for me, like I just like Young as an add-on. I don't want to rely upon
Right.
those 30 plus stolen bases as like,
Supplement
hey,
my steals.
but like, yeah, this is a guy like, hey, I'm third or fourth in stolen bases, and now I'm going to be first after drafting Jacob Young because I do think that there is a reasonable outcome with how much he is going to play being an elite defender in terms of getting him so late that you can be like, hey, I just won my stolen base category with him. Like, there's no reason you should be drafting Pete Crow Armstrong and not just waiting on Jacob Young later.
Absolutely. I have some concerns with PCA. Um, at where his price is going, and he had. I think we talked about that. Was it just yesterday's show? Boy,
Yeah,
yeah, I think
yesterday show, yeah.
time's flying. There's some concerns there. People getting excited about PCA, and I would rather just take somebody like Jacob Young, even if PCA gets the power edge there, and I'll grant that. I'll give him the credit for the second half power. I don't care. I'll trade it in for 150 picks and a ton of speed from Jacob Young. I'm totally with you there. We are pro Jacob Young. Now let's shift to the opposite end of the age spectrum here and talk about one of your old favorites, whose bathwater you loved slurping up, Mr. George Springer. Still doing his thing. He's not bad. He went 19-16 last year, remarkably efficient on the bases, 16 for 17. He did it 220, which is obviously horrendous. But where are we at on a 35-year-old George Springer? Is it going to be more of that same?
Uh, I feel like Springer is like underrated now. He went from a guy that we were all shooting for the moon on when he was coming up, like, hey, he's gonna do what he did in the minor leagues, be a 30-30, 40-40 kind of guy. And he never kind of turned into that. But now that he's older, we just kind of forget about him
Right.
a little bit in
Well,
drafts.
it's funny how much more he runs now, and I know it's part of the stolen base rules
Yeah.
changing. But yeah, he stole a bunch in the minors, and we expected him to be this power speed dynamic. Houston said, no, we don't really run here because it's not an efficient thing to do.
Yeah.
You just go mash taters with a good batting average and tons of runs. And now in his old age, he's dropping 20-20, 15-15 type seasons. Can he get the average back at all though? 220, I can't do that.
I think he can. Like He had a 244 XBA. He still
Okay.
makes a lot of contact in the zone. I think he's going to be totally fine. I think for him, it's the health, right? Like,
Right.
is he going to be able to stay on the field for 500 plus plate appearances every season at his age? We're now talking about a guy who's 35 years old.
600 plus the last 2 years, though,
Yeah,
at 33 and
and
34.
and this is why, like, I feel like he is kind of criminally underrated in the market, especially if you need a guy who can give you a runs boost this late in a draft, but also, potentially be 2020. Like, I mean,
Yep.
I like George Springer a lot at this price.
Yeah, pick 250 does not strike me as problematic for George Springer.
No.
All right. From one Mason favorite to another, one of the more recent ones. Are you still on the Brandon Marsh train? I know that,
Oh,
things haven't gone
I
crazy there.
thought you were going to Luke Rayleigh. I was like, this is not one of my.
No,
favorites.
that's a Sporer guy. I had to try to talk you into him last year. I was right by the end of the year. It took a while, but we'll get to that in a moment. But are you still on the Brandon Marsh train? I know he's a platoon guy out there, but he went 16, 19, 249. Basically what we're hoping Springer can do, and he's much younger. Where do we come out on Brandon Marsh, who goes at pick, well, if I had spelled Marsh properly, 340. So very, very cheap relative to somebody like Springer. Maybe we just go with him 90 picks later, no?
No, I want Brandon Marsh to be a thing, but at this point, I think we gotta take the Mean Girls approach and just say that.
Wait. Why, though? He went 16, 19, 249 last year. What's wrong with that? You just gassed up Springer, who did the same thing with a 220
because
average.
He platoons at the bottom of the Phillies lineup.
Okay. It's a good lineup to be part of, though.
In a daily lineups league, fine.
Okay.
Deep daily lineups league, I have no problem. Even like, maybe kind of like a back end guy in your NFBC leagues, but I just don't think we're ever going to see it all come together. And we're talking about guys who have the potential to still put it all together. I just think that Marsh he's a great defender, but he gets nicked up a lot. He is very cheap.
340.
I don't necessarily have a problem with it. He's just not a target for me.
Okay, so you've jumped off that train for Brandon Marsh.
That means he'll break out.
Yeah, it's time now. You jumped off a year too early, and it's game over. Michael Conforto. I talked about Tommy Edman being a cheap entree into the Dodgers lineup. Conforto, I believe, is even cheaper because you can get Conforto at pick 282. And is this a good way to get a cheap Dodger here? He went 20-66 with a 237 for your boys last year, a 112 WRC plus. I know he's getting some hype in certain pockets. Going to be at the bottom of the order, sure, but it's the Dodgers order, so that doesn't even matter. Do you like him at pick 282?
I do. I think this is exactly the way you should get a cheap part of the Dodgers lineup because he's moving from one of the worst stadiums in baseball, the If for Power, and to a great stadium, a great team. Yes, he is probably going to be on the strong side of platoon, but
it's fine.
If you're in a league where you can maximize those plate appearances, you're talking about a guy that, when healthy, is still a really, really good bat. And like his X home run in San Francisco last year was 16. His X home run in LA would have been 21. So we're talking about a pretty big jump in terms of expected power output. Now, health, platoon, you can't pencil him in for a lot of plate appearances, but in leagues where you can optimize, I like Michael Conforto a lot.
I'm with it. And I agree that it's a good way to get into the Dodgers lineup cheaply there. With some of these later guys like Edman and Conforto, and he should just mash. In the time he gets, he's probably only going to get 470 type plate appearances, but they're going to be really good. And so, yeah, I'm with it. I think that's a fair price at 282 to get Michael Conforto. Now, Luke Rayleigh. I tried to make him a thing last year. You made fun of me. And for the better part of the first half of the year, you were totally right. He's one of those guys that popped off on somebody else's team, and it wasn't necessarily a mistake for the people that cut him. Because he was a late enough pick that if you cut him after the first month when he had a 505 OPS, I understood. Like, it was pretty bad. But he immediately turned it around. It wasn't even the better part of the first half there. I overstated that. 828, 857 OPSs in May and June. Dipped down again in July with a 504, but then spiked up even bigger in the August, September, 991, 970. So ups and downs there for Luke Rayleigh. Not Rook Laley. Ends up going 22-11 with a 243. Not too bad. you're probably not that interested this year because you're a hating ass bitch. But
Yeah.
he's a first base outfielder at pick 320, 318. You're not sold at all by what he did last year, 22 and 11, 1914 the year before that?
In AL only makes a lot of sense. And in leagues where you can optimize the daily moves line, deeper leagues.
He's a platoon guy as well. Yeah.
Yeah, because he's going to platoon. The hard part is he just like doesn't have the lineup around him to help him accumulate. Like
that's fair.
Like,
I will point out 58 runs in ribbies last year, which is pretty pedestrian.
Yeah, like I would rather go with a Conforto, right? I would rather go with a Brandon Marsh here. At least it's
that's
just
fine.
A better overall lineup. That being said, like I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with him. He is who he is. He's a strong side platoon bat that has, I think, infield and outfield eligibility. So
yes, first and outfield for Luke Raley.
So like a 15-team league, putting him on your bench, like to cover first and outfield, like I have no problem doing that. But he's just not a guy that I end up with.
All right, we're at 2 hours, 9 minutes, and you got just a handful of minutes left. So it's the speed round, folks. There's still tons of guys to talk about, but we cannot deep dive all of them. So I'm just going to kind of get your takes. I'll throw in a chip in take here and there on the guys I like or don't like if I have a strong feeling. Roman Anthony, again, vying for a job. I don't think he's going to get one. I think he's better served to go to AAA. Do you disagree with that for Roman Anthony?
Yeah, but I'm still drafting. I think
you're taking the shot.
Yeah, I think he has a really good opportunity to come up quickly. Willie Abreu is dealing with some sort of illness. I don't think it's going to be
he's next on the list, by the way. So yeah. Loop him in there. Go ahead.
He's not going to be ready for the start of the season. He apparently has dropped a ton of weight.
Yep.
So like, you know, they're like one injury away from Roman Anthony being up, and once he's up for good. So for me, like Roman Anthony is a worthy gamble at the price, especially if it seems like he's going to go down. He will plummet in drafts in late March. I'll take the gamble because I think he's up before the end of April, and I think he is the rookie of the year in the American League.
Ooh, I like it. Big love there for Roman Anthony. Yeah, and I like Willie Abreu, but this illness is a problem right now. He's not going to be ready for opening day, so that's kind of a bummer. Let's go back to Cincinnati. Jake Fraley rakes daily, and I'm still going after him because he can still perform. Now, health has been remarkably elusive. Bring in Austin Hayes as well, who I think is set up for an everyday job. He is a right-hander who's been platooned in the past, but the way their setup is right now, Fraley's going to platoon with somebody like Christian Encarnacion Strand or Stuart Fairchild, but they got Hayes penciled in every day because there's not enough platoons to go around. I think Fraley and Benson need to platoon.
And Spencer Steer is hurt too.
Is hurt, so yes, exactly. So Hayes' everyday job in Cincinnati is interesting, and Fraley, even as a strong side platoon guy in Cincinnati, I'm still in. I like both these guys. What do you think of Fraley and Austin Hayes? Very cheap picks, by the way.
Yeah, they're just so cheap. I think you can take the gamble on it, and you'll know pretty quickly what the playing time situation is going to kind of shape out to be. Like I had someone in my chat a couple weeks ago, like, oh, what do I do in Cincinnati? Like, you know, there's just too many bodies and not enough playing time for everybody. And it's like, we said that exact same thing last year.
Don't make that mistake, folks.
It always works out. You're talking about a really interesting, fun, talented team, but it is filled with injury risk. TJ Friedl, Matt McClain, Austin Hayes,
Fraley himself.
Fraley himself. Like it'll get figured out one way or another. I think one of the interesting things is like, what happens to Fraley's playing time if Encarnacion Strand keeps like, you know, doing what he's doing in spring, which is
sure.
At least early on in spring has been like just rocketing the ball. Like I still think he'll find his, you know, spots on a strong side platoon because I don't think that they need to be like starting Will Benson, but I do think that Fraley is probably less likely to end up on my teams than like a guy like Hayes. I think Hayes has a little bit
really
more
keen on Hayes.
Yeah, I think his playing time's a little bit more cemented. Fraley is frail.
Shut up.
Yes. Like,
I know.
You can't say healthy.
I don't want to hear your damn puns right now making fun of one of my guys, but you're right.
I feel like he's 35 even though he's 29.
Exactly.
So Yeah, if I'm going to take a gamble on one of those two guys, it's Hayes. I'm probably not taking a gamble on either, though. And they're probably to go in a different direction. There's so many other guys I like.
They're cheap though, man. I'm
They
going
are.
like they're both past pick 350. I'm going for Hayes at that price point.
These
I
are all the
believe
guys that you can cycle in and out of your roster,
right.
even in a 15.
And some of these guys are going to break out. We don't know which
Yeah.
ones, so pick your favorites as the potential breakouts. I believe this is a Jason Collette breakout. MJ Melendez. He's going to the well one more time. I think so. I might be wrong on that.
This has been a Mason guy for years.
Okay, so Jason generally listens to our show. He'll tell us if I'm wrong there, but I think he is. He's had 3 pretty full seasons, and it hasn't come together. I think he's going to the well one more time here to see what we can get out of MJ Melendez. Playing time is locked, at least on the strong side. He might face some platoon if he doesn't take the step forward, but MJ Melendez is still just 26 years old. Are you in still? You said he's been a Mason guy in the past. Are you sticking with him?
He made a swing change in the offseason, and while he's still striking out at too high of a clip, like he is hitting the ball fairly hard and well. I think there's a lot of power in the bat. The problem is he's not great defensively, and if he continues to strike out at a high clip, I think he probably will lose playing time. But I think there's immense upside here that I'd be willing to take a gamble on because I think we'll know pretty quickly what he's looking like in season.
And it's cheap enough to take the gamble on Melendez, pick 364. A guy I can't quit, and I'm being rewarded after so many years. No, you shut your mouth about Pavin Smith. And Dusty Wagner, if you're listening, you shut your mouth about him too. Guys making fun of me. 142 WRC plus last year and 158 plate appearances.
Yeah,
but he's the strong side DH right now. He's going to be Jock Peterson this year, though. I'm not even joking. I think he's actually going to have his best year from a volume standpoint and just be their Jock Peterson this year. He's got good plate skills. He's got some pop. Why am I wrong?
Okay, so I think that early on in the season, yes, he will be able to volume. I think you should take the gamble because if he hits well, he can hold on to that playing time. Any stumble, and I think he loses his job. And all of a sudden, Jordan Lawler is the shortstop, and Perdomo is taking up a lot of those DH spots. So, or it's Suarez with Perdomo at third.
Y'all need to relax trying to make Lawler a thing. It ain't happening until the summer. I'm sorry.
And like I said, the early part of the season, I think Pavin Smith can do it. But I think if he does not hit, if he struggles, he is going to be a casualty. So I'm okay taking the gamble at the price because I think he is going to be on the strong side of platoon early on in the season and get a lot of opportunities. But I think it's a very short leash, and you need to be ready to cut really quickly, which is fine, again, at the price.
For pick 380, absolutely for Pavin Smith there. Jesse Winker, platoon guy, but on a good team with the Mets, still hits righties. Anything to add there? No. Is that just kind of how it is? He's fine, right? Boring, but fine?
He's not going to run.
Well, yeah, there goes those steals. And so do not let that get into your projection because that was a pure Washington thing, folks. That Jesse Winker, he might get 0 this year. I would not even be the least bit surprised he got 0 with the Mets. Yeah, you're overdoing it. Right, and I'm barely kidding.
I haven't projected for 4, but
no, why?
Yeah, I need to lower that.
It was all Washington. He went 14 for 18 and then 0 for 0 with the Mets.
Yeah, like and that is like, and I want to say he had like 4 total stolen bases previously in his career.
3.
Yeah, so it was insane. Like this is again just further proof that anybody or a lot of guys can run and just don't because they're on teams and
if
some
they get
guys
to the right team,
run and they're on, but they're on the right team. So I just think Winker is so boring and he's injury prone. Like
he is boring. He is injury prone, but he is a good bat. And he can be like this Pavin Smith, Jock Peterson type that I'm talking about where like the strong side of the platoon, but it's very niche. It's like an NL only deeper league situation. Let's go to Tampa Bay.
It's not like Jock Peterson because like he had 500 plate appearances.
He doesn't have as much power either.
He doesn't have the power. Yeah,
that's fair. That's fair. It's bad comp on Peterson.
It is such empty batting average, and batting average can be really, really fluky, as you've seen from him hitting 253 last year. In 2022, he hit 219, then he hit 305 and 20. Like it's just, I don't want Jesse Winker.
I don't usually take him. He's pick 417 though. Like he is dirt cheap. Just want to be clear on that. Let's go to Tampa Bay. Talk about 2 guys there. I briefly mentioned Johnny DeLuca earlier because he's my savior in TARF, but he's going to be the everyday center fielder. I don't think he's going to have to platoon. I think he is going to have that job. And I think he can be fine. I think Johnny DeLuca was a solid pickup in that Tyler Glasnow deal. He went 6-13 last year in 107 games. I think he can build on that. It wasn't the best year. I think it can be like a 95 to 100 WRC plus, getting like 12 homers and 25 steals, which is not too bad for where Johnny DeLuca goes. What do you think?
I like Johnny DeLuca kind of late in drafts. I think
Mm-hmm.
that he's gonna play kind of full time in center field for the Rays, and yes, he's gonna hit the bottom of the lineup. It's not an overpowering lineup, so like the runs and RBIs, I don't think will be great. But he stole 16 bases in 362 plate appearances. I think he's cheap speed at the end of your draft.
That's what I'm saying. And that's why I like Johnny DeLuca down there. Speaking of cheap speed, if he can make the roster, he got speed for days. 104 steals last year in the minors for a guy named Chandler Simpson. You're probably learning about him just this year as he's been a spring standout because of that crazy speed. He's hitting 364 in very, 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 very limited time. But I think he made the spring breakout team, of course, and the speed for days. No room at the end right now, and I don't think he forces his way onto this roster. But Chandler Simpson's a name to know, right? I don't think I'm drafting him anywhere, but I want to know, except for DC's. But you're not playing DC's this year anyway.
Yeah.
What do you think of Chandler Simpson in Tampa Bay?
He stole 104 bases last year in the minors.
Simply 104. That's it.
I've heard scouts mention this, like if there was something higher than 80 grade speed, Chandler Simpson has it.
Yes. Yes. You put a 9 on it if you wanted to break the scale.
I agree. I don't think he's going to make the team, but like for those who've been playing fantasy for a long time, this is Gerard Dyson right now.
Yeah. Yep.
A guy who in part-time playing time could steal 50 bases. Like,
yep.
So like it's more of a watch list guy or a DC guy, but I would definitely, if it seems like he's coming up because of an injury or someone's getting sent down, like Chandler Simpson, if you need stolen bases, could be one of those guys that comes off of the wire and puts 50 stolen bases on your roster.
He's going to be very expensive, though, especially if he goes to AAA and runs wild. When he comes up, he's going to be one of those guys that's going to go triple digits. So, yeah, I like Chandler Simpson, but keep an eye on him in spring. Maybe he can break through, but right now I don't think there's enough room at the end. Speaking of not enough room at the end, Heston Kjerstad, I love him, man. I want to love him, but he's on the outside looking in still, and I don't know where he's going to necessarily break through because they're committed to the Ryans at the DH first base platoon with O'Hearn and Mountcastle, and I don't blame them. I think they should be. O'Hearn's done nothing to lose the job. So I know people will say, well, Kjerstad's 26 versus O'Hearn 32, just play Kjerstad. Why? O'Hearn's doing the job. So as much as I like Kjerstad, I can't really get there with a lot of drafting him because I just don't know where he plays right now. Over the course of the year, something could develop, but in drafts right now, he's hard to take, isn't he, Heston Kjerstad?
Yeah, and I wonder if he's even going to make this team just because, like, wouldn't they rather him be
get regular PT?
Get regular plate appearances. He's not lighting the world on fire in spring. So I think there's a really good chance he starts here in the minors and they go with kind of an
Dylan
older.
Carlson. Yeah. I think Dylan Carlson could be the guy that gets the spot.
Especially because Carlson's a good defender. So like,
I love Dylan Carlson.
Shouldn't, but okay.
Shut your mouth. No, I'm not drafting him or anything like that. I'm just saying he could get that spot over Kjerstad. Hunter Goodman, we did talk about on catcher way back when, and we like him way more there, but he's a non-catching catcher possibly for Colorado. Are you still in on possibly taking him in a 2-catcher league?
Yeah, I think some more second catcher guys have emerged as spring training has gone on.
I agree with that.
But he's still a 2-catcher target for me.
He's absolutely ripping the cover off the ball in 18 spring plate appearances. It's 18 plate appearances, but Hunter Goodman.
That's what he does. It's just a matter of will the Rockies.
Here's the thing, Justin. Here's the thing: 6% walk, 2% swinging strike. Again, very, very small sample, but Hunter Goodman is somebody who strikes out like crazy. We look at strikeouts and walks in spring. He's also walking at a 22% clip. I don't think either of those extreme rates is going to stick, but if he strikes out, if it ends up like 20% K and 14% walk rate by the end of spring, that's going to move the needle for me on Hunter Goodman. If he shows these skills kind of holding up, because he was 29% K and 4% walk in the majors last year. So at least early on, he's doing the things that you want to see from somebody who has glaring weaknesses. It is 18 spring plate appearances, folks. Do not overrate it, but keep Hunter Goodman on your radar. He is catcher eligible. and not going to catch very often. That is
Yeah.
exactly what you want in fantasy, especially two catcher leagues. Big Christmas, Jungkenzie Noel. What's the outlook for him this year? He's Franmil Reyes. I cannot be convinced otherwise that that's not Franmil Reyes in a costume.
I was gonna say it's Kyle Blanks, but yeah, I
Fair
mean,
enough. Franmil's the better version of Blanks, though.
Yeah, but I mean, I think he's closer to Kyle Blanks than he is to Franmil Reyes.
Oh, you think so? No, I think he's basically just a Franmil clone.
He could be. Like he's gonna strike out a bunch. He's got power. I just don't know how much Cleveland is gonna let him play.
Right, and I think that's a fair concern, and that's why he's so cheap.
Yeah, I think that becomes kind of the big issue for me. Especially being right-handed in that park, like he could end up on the short side of platoon. I think he will be on the short side of platoon, and that's just not super interesting to me.
Best nickname in baseball, though. Big Christmas, Jungkenzie Noel. Let's go back to your Giants. A couple guys over there. Gerard Encarnacion is getting some spring buzz. I'm seeing some folks that I trust in the industry gassing him up a bit. And then on the boring end, you got Mike Yastrzemski. So you got a guy that's maybe emerging a little bit, a 27-year-old Encarnacion, and then boring but playing 34-year-old Mike Yastrzemski. Talk to us about the two Giants there. Start with Encarnacion.
Well, you're saying you're hearing a lot of people you trust talk about Encarnacion. Do you trust me?
Yeah.
I really think this is an interesting sleeper pick right here. There's
added to the mix, baby.
Yeah, there's no reason they should be. I know they're going to give Yastrzemski a lot of.
They can play both Yastrzemski and Encarnacion at DH. They don't have to fight each other.
I think Encarnacion is a pretty interesting bat. I think there's a lot of risk because we've seen kind of up and down performance from him. But we're talking about a guy who has, in the minor leagues at times, really just crushed the ball. If he can keep the strikeout rate in check, I think Encarnacion could be the power source the Giants have been looking for in the middle of the lineup for a long time. It's just a matter of will he get the playing time and be able to keep those strikeouts in check. But I think this is one of my favorite gambles kind of late in the draft.
Love it. Gerard Encarnacion. And Yaz is just boring playing time. Not going to do much for you. But
he'll get hurt at some point, and that'll, I think this is the swan song for Yaz right now.
Speaking of getting hurt, Matt Vierling got hurt, and he was a fun pick for a lot of folks. Third base, outfield, but this is going to cost him some time. He's ruled out for opening day, strained right rotator cuff. He's off my draft board because of it, though, because even when he comes back, isn't it going to sap the power?
Yep.
It does open the door for Wenzel Perez to get back in the mix, though, for the Tigers, and he loves for Wenzel.
Yeah, well, and Parker Meadows, too, being hurt, too. I think
the double dip there for Wenzel.
I think Wenzel is going to be playing every day to start the season, and I think he's the guy you should put at the back end of your roster just for volume's sake. Like right now, we haven't projected hit third every day in the lineup.
They batted him high last year. He took a lot of really good at-bats. Now, still only had like a 300 OBP and a 95 WRC plus, but I saw things from him watching every day for Perez where I was like, he's a better player than I thought who could grow. And the Tigers have shown themselves to be a development org. I know this is a new thing, especially with the pitching we've seen more than the hitting, but I'm intrigued by Wenzel. I hate the reason that he's going to get more playing time with Meadows and Vierling being hurt, but I'm excited for Wenzel Perez to get the opportunity at least.
Yeah,
and he's dirt cheap.
Yeah, he's super cheap.
This guy's going to be dirt cheap, and I know it's like, are you kidding me with 34-year-old Mike Tauchman?
No, but he's draft Mike Tauchman.
I'm saying leading off, and he lives on base. And I know that lineup sucks, but again, I think they're going to be regular bad this year, not historically bad. They're going to be like a 58 to 62 win type of team. That still sucks, right?
Yeah.
But leading off every day with Robert Jr. and Vaughn behind you, neither of which is like the stud of studs, but they're going to drive him in. Tauchman's going to score runs.
Yep. Cheap run force. Love it. Yeah.
Yep. This Houston outfield, dude, they should just bring back Richard Hidalgo. But right now they got Chas McCormick, Jake Myers. The Altuve thing is happening. Espada said, he is playing left, which, by the way, Brendan Rodgers, baby, let's go. Chas McCormick or Jake Myers doing anything for you with the playing time because they have the PT, though.
Jake Myers, yes, in a really, really deep league as, like a bench outfielder because I think he's going to play every day. But Chas McCormick, I just don't think is very good at baseball.
It was a flash in the pan there for a while. He went 22-19 in 2023, and you're like, wow, this might be something. Cratered last year, 5-8 with a 66 WRC plus.
One of those classic guys that, like, hey, in limited playing time you don't get exposed, but in full-time playing time you get exposed.
That's exactly what happened to him. Tommy Pham, speaking of leading off on a crummy team, same vibe there in Pittsburgh. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, if you don't get Pham, you can take Talkman because I think he goes after. But they're very much the same vibe, leading off. I know that they're weak lineups. Pittsburgh's lineup's definitely better than the White Sox, so I will take Tommy Pham and get everything I can out of him. Can Jack Sawinski come back into the mix now? He's playing in spring a lot. He's still on the 40. We have him penciled to go back to AAA. But are we back in on the Jack Sawinski train at all? He ripped a homer and has 3 steals, and he's tearing the cover off the ball in spring. Can he force his way back into this mix? You're muted. You're still muted.
Yeah, I'm still muted.
There you go.
I if he can force his way back into this lineup, then I would be interested. But yeah, he's hit well in spring, but it's still 17.5% swinging strike rate. The overall contact rate is still down.
It's fair.
I think he's, again, one of these guys that, like, I don't think he even knows who he is at this point of his career. And I do like seeing him swing more.
Yes, because he's had some passivity issues too. Sawinski has. That's a good call. But I just don't know where the room comes, because the one thing that the Pirates have is the lineup. The outfield is kind of set.
Yeah.
Pham in left, O'Neill Cruz in center, and Reynolds in right.
If they were willing to move Cruz back to shortstop, but I don't think they are. Like,
no. Or if they were willing to put like one of these guys at first, because Kutch is going to take DH as well. First is open, but who's going to play there? I know there was some rumblings of Reynolds doing it, but that has not materialized. So I don't know where Sawinski. Just keep him on your radar, because if he comes up, I still think he could be a compelling power speed guy. But right now,
I think the Tommy Pham signing just kind of crushed him.
I do agree, at least in the short term. And then we'll end with Kyle Stowers, who I did mention I do have a little tinge of excitement for in Miami. Playing time should be plentiful. He's got big boy power that I think can play everywhere. We have him for a platoon right now. I swear to God, if the Marlins platoon him, they're psychotic. I don't care what he hits. I don't care what he hits against lefties.
Yeah,
let him play every day. I understand he's got flaws. I'm not here to say Kyle Stowers is some sort of stud, but why not give him 500 plate appearances and just see what the hell you got?
I think they should. I don't know that they're going to, but
I don't think that they are either, because they're a clown organization. And again, this is less about Stowers and more about their organization as a whole.
It's super small samples. Looks terrible in spring right now.
Yes, and he is a swing and miss guy. I don't want to like cape too hard for Stowers specifically. I just want to rant against the Marlins being garbage.
That's
so I want to be clear on that. Anybody else? I guess one guy I did want to include, just because old, boring, but still going to get some playing time. Starling Marte doing anything for you with the Mets?
If he's healthy, I mean, I think, like, this is a really good lineup, and I think there's very little price attached. So I don't have a problem taking a gamble there, especially because I think when he's healthy, he's going to play quite a bit.
And I think you'd kill me if I didn't let you say something about Jared Kelenic, who at least has a month of playing time locked and loaded. Yes?
I want to believe, baby. I
know you do.
But I just... if you want to take him and gamble on the first month of the season, but I think he's guaranteed to lose that playing time unless things really, really turn around for him.
Somebody would have to get hurt to save him when Acuna comes back, though, right?
He, in spite of the surface numbers, he actually looks a lot better in spring. So I am a little bit encouraged, but I'm probably not drafting him really outside of maybe the last pick of a draft.
That's fine. That's totally fine. And then Richie Palacios is playing some outfield there. I did say that, like, nobody was going to platoon. I think, did I say that about DeLuca? I think that's who I said that about. And I don't think DeLuca is necessarily going to lose playing time, but they are giving Palacios some outfield reps. I think that might hurt Morel more if Morel doesn't take a step forward. We talked about Palacios at second base, I believe, but keep him on your radar. He had 19 steals in a small sample last year. Did we talk about him? No, we didn't. So he didn't make the second base. He has second base outfield. He went 5-19 in 92 games last year. I think Palacios is kind of intriguing, so I'm glad I added him last second here.
I think Jason's a big fan. He's drafted him in a couple spots, and
I think the playing time could start to open up for him with this outfield, with these outfield reps that he's getting in spring. I do think Palacios could actually become a bit of a factor. So again, I'm really glad I added him here last second. Anybody else that I forgot, or did we actually do it? We got to the end of outfield. There's other guys I know, folks. If you guys have questions about them, throw them in the comments. I'll answer them for sure. But like, it just starts to be a lot of the same type of guys. Like,
and I really want to get to pitching here.
Yeah, we got to get to pitching on Monday. Alec Thomas, I mentioned him a few different times. If Alex Verdugo, why doesn't Miami sign him and just play him? I know he's boring as hell, but just let him play.
Oh, Tirso or Nellis.
Oh, yes.
I mentioned him. He's, I believe, going to be on the strong side of platoon in San Diego. There is power in this bat, and I think he is one of these guys. He's going extremely late, and you should take.
We kicked him out of the lineup because of the Jose Iglesias signing. You're not concerned about that because Iglesias is not on the 40. It was a minor league deal, and Tirso is on the 40. So I would stick with Tirso, and I think him getting kicked off of roster resource starting lineup is going to push the price down even further.
If he doesn't make the team, you drop him real fast.
Exactly. Totally last pick, Tirso or Nellis. Literally your last pick.
Yeah.
All
absolutely.
Right. I think we did it then. We got through 8 billion outfielders today. I think we did a pretty good job there. 2.5 hours. And Monday, we start the pitchers. And boy, folks, you're in for a doozy. You're in for a doozy with Justin's number 6 pitcher. I can't wait to talk about it.
Number eight pitcher.
Justin, have a fantastic weekend. Potapalooza coming up.
Potapalooza, make sure you are subscribed to the YouTube and watching all weekend long. I'm going to be raising money for Fantasy Cares. It's going to be a blast.
Excellent. I will talk to you over the weekend, and then we'll talk again on this podcast on Monday. Until then, take care.
Take it easy.